X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we normally rank every story from A to Z. I'm Adam Reck, and if you couldn't tell by my somewhat creaky voice, I went to New York City Comic-Con this past weekend. Zach, unfortunately and understandably, couldn't make it to the East Coast, so he's not here this week. And just as an aside, round of applause for Zach. This is his first episode that he has not been on. So everything could go wrong at any moment. We'll see. Over the last 4 days, I've clocked tens of thousands of steps and talked to tons of great creators. If you want the minute-by-minute play-by-play, go to Arthur Stacy on Twitter and get all the details on things like the Tiki Summit, my live tweet of the Dawn of X panel, and even some pictures of me with you, our listeners. If I did run into you at the con, it was great to meet you, and please stick your Battle of the Atom sticker on something that you love. On today's show for this New York City Comic-Con super special, we have 8 great interviews with ex-creative people from days of future, present, and past, including Matteo Lolli, Vita Ayala, Marcus To, Whilce Portacio, Herman Peralta, Adriano Di Benedetto, Matt Rosenberg, and Jordan D. White. We also have a bonus sit-down with New York Magazine comics journalist Abe Riesman. This is a big episode, so we will post the start times of each interview in the show notes, so you can bounce around if you want. But I highly recommend listening to all of it because you will get some real insight into everything from Dawn of X to the creation of Bishop, and even some insight into whether Rivers Cuomo actually likes the X-Men or not. Before we start the interviews, I want to remind everyone that we are in week 2 of the nonprofit Kickstarter for Bish and Jubes, the collected edition. I want to thank anyone that supported the project in week 1, and if you have been waiting for that 15th paycheck to drop, I totally get it, but I do hope that you will head over to Kickstarter and order your copy and get whatever goodies you want sometime this week. And now, on with the show.
I feel like in like a school. No, you're fine. Okay, here we go. I'm here with Matteo Lolli, artist of Deadpool as Guardians of the Galaxy and the highly anticipated Marauders for Dawn of X. Matteo, how you doing today?
Fine, thank you.
Good?
Thank you.
Con's going well?
Yeah, everything's going well. We flight yesterday. I'm settled down in New York. What's best?
Have you been to New York before?
I can't remember how many times I've been to the New York Comic Con, but yes, I always enjoy coming here.
Good. Now, you've worked with Jerry Duggan before, right? On Deadpool?
Yes.
What's your relationship like?
Yeah, anyone that knows Jerry can do anything else than love him, because he's like the best guy to interact with in the industry for me. He's like easygoing, he's always funny, he's like almost one of the family, because every time I speak with him, I feel like I'm not in New York, in another country. I feel like he's like one of my friends, and it's amazing to work with someone like that.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys have that kind of bond.
Oh, yeah,
it's really good. Now, this new book that you guys are doing, it seems to be getting maybe the most buzz, I think, of the Dawn of X books.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that people should be excited?
Yeah, it's obviously. No, well, I feel like I'm a bit thrilled, also afraid because of all the anticipation that this book is getting. But yes, I think Jerry did a great work. obviously, his vision is not like immediately coming out from the first issue. It's like it will take a lot to develop. But from what I've worked on, I see great potential on the title.
Very cool.
So yeah, hopefully the readers will enjoy it too.
How many issues in are you?
First 2, then I'm part of issue 5, and when I get back, I will work on issue 6.
Very nice.
I've already finished my part of issue 5, but yes, I think we are kind of rushing because, I guess, they're making a double exit each month.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So yes,
yeah, they seem to be rushing the
a bit
push.
too much, but.
Now, you have, in this new book, such a cool cast of characters.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is Bishop.
Oh, yeah.
Who's your favorite out of the characters that you're working on?
I think Emma is... I always loved, even before working on the character, I always loved that iconic character. But working on her, you understand how difficult it is to balance her because it's not that easy to get the good grip of it of her. But yes, I think I'm enjoying each time I draw her more. I love it, and also Kitty. Kitty is it wasn't one of my favorite characters, but working on her. It became one of them.
Yeah, it seems like this is a newer take on Kitty Pryde, with the black eye and the jacket.
Yes. Badass.
Yeah.
Badass Kitty.
What are they calling her now? The Red Queen, the Red King?
Yes.
You may not be allowed to say that. I don't
No.
know.
Yeah, I'm allowed because I didn't know, but they pushed out my design test for the costume.
Yes.
So she will be the Red Queen.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that too because lately this week, a lot of those fashion designs started popping up on Twitter. How many different looks have you designed for all these characters?
The more of the design I've done for Kitty because I received some direction from Jerry.
Yeah.
And also Jonathan was involved. They wanted her to be piratey, but still being able to be agile on a boat. So I wanted to make her a bit posh, a bit stylish.
Yeah.
Because you're the Red Queen, you have to be really awesome in look. So I tried something very different, to push out some different design, and always keeping in mind to this piratey allure but I didn't know where they wanted me to go. When we nailed down the first few designs that we liked, then it was almost already done. So I don't know if you know which one it was selected.
I mean, I've only seen I've seen the designs, and then I've seen what's on the cover.
Yes,
so.
that's the cover. The
Is that
cover
it?
reveal.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a friend of the show, Christy Edelman. She's already done a cosplay.
Oh yeah, really? Yeah, I love it.
So
I've seen it. I said, how was it possible? Yes, it's so fast. I didn't expect it.
It's amazing. I mean, day of, you get these great reactions, right?
Yes, totally.
Now, the story, at least to start with, seems to be set on this boat.
Yeah.
And water, I know, can be a challenge for a lot of artists. Yeah. Is there a particular challenge to illustrating this book?
Well, to be true, it's not so all on the water because, the main challenge it was when they land.
Oh, okay.
Because you have many settings, and at start they are someone is there, and when you have to jump to different location. You have to look for references, to look how that Taipei looks like, or something like that. And That's the main difficulty. And also the boats. Yeah, because they change the boats. So I designed the big boat they will be in. Yeah, well, I won't tell anything else. But, yeah, but yes, boats are not that easy.
They're tricky, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like drawing a really good car. They're not always easy.
Yes.
All right, Matteo, thank you so much for your time.
You.
I appreciate it. Good luck with the book. Good luck in general, and I hope you have a great con.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
All right. I am here with Vita Ayala, a writer of Livewire, Prisoner X, and the Mystery Wave 2 book for Dawn of X, which we're not allowed to talk about. But hey, you know what? Let's talk about it anyway. It is my understanding that despite there being a big Dawn of X panel tomorrow, they are not announcing your Wave 2 book. Is that true?
I believe that is true.
Okay.
I will be at least in the audience.
Okay. So they're not even going to pull you up on the big stage?
They might. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a heckler, so I'll be there to give them hell.
I think a lot of fans reacted so warmly and positively to the SDCC announcement that you and Leo were going to be part of Wave 2. So what's been your reaction to the response?
It's been incredible. Leah and I get tagged in things all the time, even though there's literally no information available, like not even like coded hints.
Yeah.
Which is really great. I was really surprised that there was so much of a reaction because it was, like 2 sentences.
That's all it was.
And these people have books.
Yeah.
But yeah, people have been very, very supportive. They've been speculating, which I try not to look at speculation too much, but occasionally people will tag me and they'll be like, "Are you writing a Morlock book?" And I'm like, can neither confirm nor deny. I love it though. The amount of passion that this has, like Hoxpox has kind of, I mean, X-Men fans are always passionate. That's true. But like, I don't know, the engagement that people have had since the beginning of like House of X has been next level. It's been really, really awesome. They cracked the code in like half an hour.
Yep. We all know how to speak Krakoan now, and
it's real. I still have to look at the little
I
chart.
do too, and I did a little bootleg font of it that I sent out on the internet, so even I have to go back and look at it. Like, people are like, "Well, what is this, Adam?" I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Let me get my key out.
Yeah. So, have you been reading Hoxpox in real time, enjoying it?
No, I've read it at like multiple stages. I've read like the outlines and the scripts, and then I will go and read the single issue like when it's released, because it's like there's so much more at every stage. It's really, really wild. That guy's a genius, and his collaborators rather, are next level. I can't. Like, I'll open up one of the PDFs and like, I gotta lay down. Why am I doing this again? Like,
yeah, Perez and RB and Adriano are knocking it out of the ballpark. And you know, we've only gotten a glimpse into Hickman's scripting, you know, with the director's cut of Hoxpox 1, but it does seem extremely involved.
Yes. I don't know. It depends. I think that like number ones are really hard. I think that's always the longest in terms of like establishing like characters and all this stuff, and so you put in a lot more information. But I'm sure that like by issue 3, it's just like, you know what I mean. It's fine.
I don't need to explain.
Yeah, you understand
what all this stuff is. It's true. Now, even though you can't talk about your Docs book,
I love it. Hoxpox and Docs.
And Docs, yeah, we're getting
really
into
good.
Docs. You know, Wave 1 has some pretty solid teams.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of opportunities for casts in terms of who's not being cast in those books. But one of the things they stressed at SDCC was the idea that these are kind of rotating casts, that not everybody's locked into a quote-unquote team. Without any specifics, do you feel like you're getting who you want to a certain extent?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I wasn't actually worried going in.
Okay.
Because I knew the lineups, I knew kind of who was writing what, and I was like, there's no one, like, I will pitch for, like, mutants that I think are cool, that are, like, not the X-Men.
Yeah.
But I know. Absolutely. I've gotten more than I ever could have wished for.
Okay. All right. That's a really good sign. Are you getting, without being too specific, like some very interesting challenges for yourself as a writer in getting into this book?
each book is very singular. Each one has like a legitimate, like a genre and a niche that it fills and only it can fill. And so I have a very specific type of book that is different than everyone else's book, which I have a little bit of experience with, but not as much as I would like to. So this is like a perfect opportunity to kind of stretch those muscles.
Okay. I mean, we are getting like, X-Men Pirates.
Yes.
We are getting...
Oh, it's so good.
We're getting, sort of I'm guessing, I'm going to talk to Brian Edward Hill about this, but I'm guessing that Fallen Angels is almost like a tactical squad for,
I can neither confirm
I don't know.
That.
Like,
but
it's...
No book is like any of the other books.
Okay.
Like, truly, that was... I don't know if this is true, right? So this is speculation on my part.
Yeah.
But I think that going in, that was very much... that's very intentional. Every book, you don't have to buy them all, but you should want to buy them all because they're not doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's crazy, and it's a very ambitious publishing schedule, too.
Oh, my gosh.
So do you have a general idea of, like, even when your stuff is, like...
I know when
hitting?
Yes.
Okay.
I know when it's coming out. I don't know when it's being like
promoted
announced.
to announce.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. What do you think it was that brought, was it editorial that reached out to you? Were you just part of the general conversation? I know that you're friends with some of these creators. What was it that brought you back into the X-Men fold for this round?
So I was asked to pitch on something.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that one of the things that's really important to kind of keep in mind, especially with like big 2 books, is that there's no guarantee. It doesn't matter if you're already writing a thing. I was... Prisoner X hadn't finished coming out yet.
Oh, okay.
But they were like, would you like to pitch on this thing? Literally no guarantees, but you have a sense of kind of the stakes.
Okay. So was there a general outline or a concept, and then you're expanding on it?
It was the concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a bare bones idea.
Right.
Okay.
But I think that if I had really wanted to deviate, as long as I had good justification, it probably would have been
that's
fine.
great.
Okay. I got to say that all the people in that room are incredibly supportive of everyone else. Like, it's really an incredible experience. But yeah, I was told that Hickman had read Prisoner X, which is not intimidating at all, and had liked it. And the person that approached me, the editor that approached me to pitch, was like, I would really like to work with you if we can make it work. So I guess it worked.
All right, that's awesome. I mean, I can't imagine that someone would read through Prisoner X and not want you back on the X books, because
it's not for everybody, and I accept that. That's okay. Like, I truly support that. Like, it's not your kind of book, then that's cool. But the editors liked it. Yeah. And everyone that I've spoken to has been very supportive of it. So.
What is now? Hickman seems to be kind of drawing this whole new world for, not to leap into Aladdin's song, but like this whole idea of a nation state of Krakoa, right? What's your favorite sort of element of what he's been doing with the book so far?
Man, every time I read another issue, it blows my mind and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But I loved when we got the maps, like even before it was out, like they had all the maps with the different places on them. And I was like, what is the Wild Hunt? What is that? I want to be there. That's where I go.
What is the no place?
Yeah,
or
like
whatever.
what?
Right.
But I will say that like what he did with the story of Moira McTaggart, I'm not recovered. Like, I'm not recovered yet. And like, I remember reading it and going, this is bananas. Like, there's no, people are going to riot in the streets. Like, because it's so different. And it, like, one of the things that's true about comic book fans across the board, but especially X-Men fans, is that continuity has different levels of importance. But like, continuity is the through line, and it is something that people are very protective of. And that flies in the face of all of that. And I was pleasantly surprised when X-Men fans were like, this is amazing. It's like, all right.
Well, I think one of the concerns going into it was this idea that, it was a lot of Hickman's greatest hits, going into it. a lot of themes that maybe he'd covered before. So the idea that, and it's not like he hasn't covered time travel or whatever before, but the concept behind that is layered in ways that I don't think we've encountered before.
And I think it doesn't invalidate anything that's gone before. And I think that's really what people get protective of. It's like, this thing that I love, you are making it meaningless, which is not true. It'll always have meaning to you because it has meaning to you. But the way that he figured out how to do this did not in any way threaten that.
No.
Which is, he's Galaxy Brain, man. Like, this guy's a genius.
Well, and that brings up another question, though. For you guys that are on, the actual ongoings stemming out of this, big, I don't want to call it a reboot. It's not. It's an extension of where we've been.
Right.
But
a refocus.
Are you, sure. Do you guys feel like you have the same creative freedoms? If you want to put forth a gigantic idea like the Curious Case of Moira McTaggart, do you get to do that?
I think so. Every idea that I've had and that has been discussed, the only thing that is necessary is that, like, okay, let's make it make sense. Let's do the best possible version of it.
Yeah.
He's really into, like, don't soft play this. Like, if you're going to do it, go for it, and let's make it make sense.
Okay.
So, like, I literally have never had a more supportive kind of person that wasn't my direct editor in a room like that. Like, every time someone has an idea, he's like, well, let's look at it from all angles so we find the best one for it.
So are you workshopping on this with the other writers, directly with Hickman, beyond working with Jordan on these books?
It's like, I mean, as much as I can say, because I can't reveal all the secrets,
yeah.
But there has to be a lot of communication because there's so many new moving parts.
Yes.
And so there are ways that we all can communicate with each other or ask questions with each other. So, like, there is that. But, like, if you want to do something truly bonkers, you have to run it by the people that are architecting.
Yeah, I can kind of imagine that being an extra challenge to the writing process, like...
Not at all.
Okay, that's good.
What has happened is, instead of being told no, I've had people workshop it with me.
Okay.
Which I think is the best way to create. Like, cut away the stuff that doesn't work and let's prop it up with things that do.
That's a lot better solution than just like saying, we don't want to try that.
Exactly. So. And also I think that, like, they were willing to do this, which is truly, like, it's low key, like, blowing stuff up. Like, it's real wild.
Sure.
And if they're willing to do this, and I think they're willing to entertain really weird and outrageous stuff. And Jonathan's into that, so.
Good. Okay. So when you're workshopping or communicating with these folks, I mean, I'm assuming you've done some actual in-person writing workshops with these guys, or...
we have met in a group and discussed things.
Has there been a retreat?
Kinda. Not like the big marble one, but, like, we're a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the room. I mean, even just the people that you've heard of, like, that's a lot of human beings that fit in one room.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're already up to 6. If you and Leah each have a book, that's 8. I'm assuming there's more, which I won't take forward. Do not confirm or deny. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of pieces to keep in the mix, Now, X-Men is not your only world, though, right now. You're also about to release your new Morbius series, right?
Super stoked.
Yeah. So how has that been working? You've gotten comfortable within the X office.
I'm working on that one with one editor who I haven't worked before with, but who is phenomenal, and then another that I have worked with who is also very, very good. So it's actually, like, oddly the chillest book that I'm writing right now. They're just like, whoa, this is gnarly. Yeah. Print it. It's done. I'm like, wait, should I have notes? Like,
you want to give me some feedback on that gnarly stuff?
There have been times, actually, where, like, the editor's like, no, you can go that far. Actually, if you just do this instead, it's even more gnarly. And I'm like, okay, all right, you sure?
Well, Morbius is in this weird spot. I mean, he's both part of the Spider-Man universe, but he's also kind of like a Ghost Rider type, like... And
we're doing, I mean... with giving nothing away, like, it's a science horror book. Like, it's really, like, man, they're letting me get away with a lot of stuff that I didn't think I'd get away with.
Okay, well, that's good. Really great. I mean, there's probably some low-key promotion for a potential future film, right?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully. I'd love to get some of the run-over of that,
Now, speaking of, all right, we've got Wave 2 of Docs, got Morbius. I mean, you're working for how many publishers are you working for right now? 5?
Something like that. I'm also doing, it just dropped, the first issue, actually, a Comixology original.
Yeah.
Quarter Killer, with this person right here, actually,
Hello.
co-writing with Danny Lore, which I can send you the PDF if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, would love that.
But yeah, I don't know anymore. I'm writing a lot of, I live in Brooklyn, it's very expensive, so I gotta pay my rent.
So what's your schedule like as you're, going through the week?
I work every day.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to do my best writing after 2 p.m., but that doesn't mean I don't try to do writing before.
Okay.
Generally, I'll work on one project at a time,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have a problem switching gears between days. So, like, I can work on one script one day and another day. That's not a problem. I know some people have to see something all the way through before they can, like, I ain't got time for that. But generally I work from like 10 a.m. to like 9 p.m.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, so you're putting in some solid hours.
Yeah.
every
During the
day.
weekend, I'll take some time off.
Yeah.
In the day, see my wife.
And do you have to like give yourself specific days and say, hey, today I'm working on this, or are we going through an afternoon and like shuffling between things?
No, each day I can't switch between projects in a day unless it's like, this is a lettering pass and this is a script, or this is like, I can do that. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I whatever the day is, that's what I'm doing for that day. That's beyond my. I need a reset.
You are incredibly busy, which is good. I'm very glad that you're out there and you're successul. You just sat down with this absolutely gorgeous piece of original artwork.
Yeah, Herman Peralta. So like one of the things that I really wanted that I did not get for Prisoner X was Mullet Bishop. I love Mullet Bishop. But so I snuck it in as much as possible, and Herman gave me a page which has Mullet Bishop on it, which I'm still emotional. I almost cried at him. I was like, I gotta go.
Now, you were saying before we went on air that you'd never met Herman.
Never.
So,
well, he's not local at all.
Right, yeah.
But he was here, and actually Danny pointed him out, and I stopped by, and he is the warmest person I've ever met. So sweet and so sincere. And I'm sad that we're not working together right now, but he is working with Teeny.
Yes.
And so I can't be sad about that.
Yeah. I'm really glad that he's part of the new wave, which is really exciting.
He's incredibly thoughtful, incredibly... he does a lot of stuff that you don't actually see on the page. A lot of like character study stuff, a lot of thinking about the way that characters carry themselves and move. Just all this extra work. And he's very communicative, which I really like. Mm-hmm. I really, really love talking to my collaborators. Like, I'm super into that. And so, like, it was just such a pleasure working with him. I want to do it again someday.
Well, I'm so glad you actually got a chance to meet him. And this page of, sort of our 90s classic Bish going up against the Sentinel is...
oh, my God.
It's a really good one.
It was a throwback. I needed to have my Sentinel Bishop moment. Like, I needed it.
I loved Prisoner X. I thought it was absolutely outstanding. So, Vita, I know you're not allowed to talk about any specifics, but what are some things that you're just, like, really excited about in the coming year for what you're working on, or in general?
Really psyched for Bond.
Okay.
I know that's not X-Men. I'm super psyched about this X-Men book, but I can't talk about it, and I want to talk about it. But Bond has been such a pleasure. I'm writing it with Danny Lore, and it's like getting to write characters that you grew up loving, like Bishop, like Bond, is like, it's a mind trip. So I'm looking forward to seeing the reaction to that as well. Seeing if we hit the mark. I think so. I'm just looking forward to having fun. I've scaled back. Doesn't seem like it, but I've scaled back on how many books I'm writing, and that means that I can enjoy the process a lot more. And so, like, I'm looking forward to enjoying the process of writing, like, an X-Men book. Like, how cool is that?
That is really cool. It's so cool.
Just mutants in it.
Yeah. Well, Vita, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we'll have to catch up again once we actually figure out what it is you're doing.
Yeah. When's your Kickstarter launching again?
Kickstarter launches on Tuesday.
Sweet.
So thank you.
Be supporting that.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a supporter of Bishop Jubes. It means a lot to me.
No, it's the best.
All right. Thank you again, Vita. Appreciate it. All right. I am here with Marcus Toe. artist of the Age of X-Men's Next Gen Mini and the upcoming Excalibur. Marcus, without spoiling anything, what is mutant magic?
Oh, man. That's a tough question to ask.
You may not be able to answer that one, but...
Well, I mean, what's already been established in the book of the House of X and Powers of 10 and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff has been established that, a lot of mutants derive a lot of their, I wouldn't say powers, but a lot of themselves from Krakoa. And I think that's where a lot of the magic comes from, is from that island and from the flowers that bloom there.
Now, Excalibur has a long and storied history in various permutations. Were you a fan of the original Excalibur? Claremont Davis, was that your bag?
That wasn't quite my bag. That was my, I was a little bit later.
Okay.
In the Excalibur ages.
Yeah.
When Pete Wisdom got there, when Colossus was there, when Kitty Pryde was dating Pete Wisdom, that was my era.
Okay.
But I know a lot of guys in my studio at Raid Studios, they grew up on that because they're a little bit older than me, about 6 to 7 years older than me, and they all said that was the book that they picked up because that was the newest X book. You know what I mean? And that's how they started that. And you didn't have to read anything else except enjoy Excalibur.
That's true. It was kind of standalone. I'm assuming that a lot of these Dawn of X books, the way it's been described is kind of rotating casts. Do you feel like this is its own standalone, or does it sort of weave in between some of the other stories that we're going to see?
The way the book starts, we're kind of knee-deep right at the end of what was established with Hickman, right? So from our first arc, it's pretty standalone. We mentioned a bunch of things. There's going to be a lot of characters that you haven't seen yet, which is super exciting, I think, for fans. We're establishing everything that these characters have gone through, but are going to go through next. So the first issue is quite a large one. So you guys get a lot of story out of the first one, and it really sets the stage for everything that's coming ahead of us. So, but it's pretty standalone. Yeah, it's we're gonna really focus on Betsy and her new self, as it were.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's a really cool status quo change for her as a character.
And I think that's what we're writing. Like having such a large change in who she once was, and now she's really by herself in a lot of ways. And especially with Krakoa being only for mutants, she's very close to Brian, and she can't be, she can't be living with Brian all the time now anyway, so they have to be apart.
It's an interesting
idea, yeah.
Okay. Now, with Next Gen, you were drawing a lot of sort of the young, I don't want to call them B-listers, but not the core X-Men. This new team you've got is like A-listers throughout. I mean, do you have a preference of what you like to draw in terms of, the X universe?
It sounds like a cop-out when I say like each book has its own, enjoyments. Like a lot of the characters that I got to draw in Next Gen were a lot of fun as well. I think with the A-listers, what was the most fun out of it was actually, designing their costumes, because you have these really iconic guys, and you have to try to stay true to, their looks as much as you can. But trying to update them, now that was really exciting to do.
So now the new Betsy Braddock Captain Britain look.
Yeah.
How many versions of that did you go through before you settled on the?
It went pretty easy. It actually went pretty simple. Like we got, I spoke to TD on the phone. We talked about what we both wanted or were looking for, styles. She sent over some ref that she was pouring over, and then I used that ref and parlayed it to more, deeper searches on certain looks that we were going for. And, I really wanted to try to stay true to, the traditional Captain Britain looks. So, the color scheme and the The cross across the chest we made sure to keep. Her helmet still basically looks like the old Captain Britain one. We'll see her wear the mask / helmet a few times in the story, but I also wanted to have her, look like a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point of the cape. That's the point of what I thought would be her gold X's. It really I thought it would give her a lot more, like knight in shining armor leader look to her, and I think that was the main goal. So that that went pretty easily, I'd say.
Yeah, there's something majestic about the look, especially with some of the illustrations have had her with flowers in her hair, almost like a floral wreath. It's really neat.
Yeah, and I looked through a few looks on English, I don't want to say uniquely English knights, but English maidens mixed with female armor, mixed with a couple things, and the flower motif that was quite prevalent, right?
Okay.
So I thought it was only right to have her with it, especially with the Krakoa flowers, specifically uniquely to the book. Why not, right?
Now, another character who's extremely majestic, but is not usually on a superhero team.
Yeah.
You've got Apocalypse on your team now. How has it been drawing him in? I don't know if I want to use the word heroic, because we don't know if that's the way the story is going to go down, but he does seem to be on this team.
Yeah.
So what's that like?
Oh, it's a challenge in a visual standpoint, because he's so large.
Yes.
Fitting him in panels sometimes is difficult, but he's an immensely fun, because every good story has good conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And what better team conflict than having probably one of the greatest villains in X-Men lore and on your team, and you have to find a way to work with them.
Yeah.
So, but they're all working towards really the same goals, is to protect mutants.
Mm-hmm.
But different people have different ways of doing it.
Now, did you have a hand, because we've seen in House of X6, we've seen Pepe Larraz's, kind of version of Apocalypse. Did you have a hand in that design, or is your design in Excalibur different than what we've already seen? Because he seems to kind of be robed, if you will. Yeah.
Teeny and I discussed it, and we thought to ourselves that, especially which has been established already in House of X, was that Apocalypse felt like he no longer has to fight anymore because he's gotten what he wanted.
Right.
So imagine if you were fighting your entire life, now you can just shed all that armor and wear the clothes that you originally wanted to wear. So a lot of my designs, we were trying to go with a little bit more of that, Pharaoh, Egyptian kind of his background was that. And I actually, Apocalypse was the one that took a lot of tries.
Okay.
When the book comes out, I'll release more of them, but I went full Egyptian wizard at one point, and then I pulled back.
I think we would love to see that.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool. You've mentioned Teeny a couple times.
Yeah.
She's feeling under the weather this week. We hope she's feeling better soon. But how has that relationship been working with her on this book?
Oh, fantastic! I've met her only through this project, so I didn't know her before.
Oh, okay.
Which is a very unique experience. As with any new partnership, it takes a little while to get comfortable with each other's writing styles and art styles. But now I'm just gonna finish issue 5 next week, so we're rolling really good. It's been a great experience. I learned a lot from Teeny. She writes a very compelling script, and after every issue, I'm just like, oh man, what next? So
that's a good feeling.
Yeah, and that makes it exciting. It makes it exciting for me to draw that, because I want to convey those same feelings when I'm reading it in my art. So the pacing changes, and a lot of things when you're reading a writer's script, trying to understand their pacing and their tendencies to reveals and different things like that. it's really fun.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it's going well. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you've got commissions to get to.
Yeah, no problem.
One last question. What are you most excited about in the coming year? Doesn't even have to be X-Men.
Oh, well, I'll be honest, my life so far has been just drawing this book. So I'm really excited for this book to come out. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but
no, it's not.
I have been nothing has excited me more than this book coming out. Hopefully the fans will feel the excitement through the pages.
Marcus, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. Guys, I am here with an X-Men legend, the one, the only, Whilce Portacio. Whilce, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Oh, great. I'm here at New York, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I thought San Diego was crazy, but this is crazy. This is crazy.
So let's go back to, I think, the first time that I saw your work was the Legion of the Night mini. And I distinctly remember there was a 2-issue thing, and I only had the first issue. But I loved it. I mean, you have such a distinct, how do you describe your own style in terms of an artist?
Well, that's interesting because I'm kind of a Spock kind of brain guy, Mm-hmm. I actually didn't get into comics first. I got into science fiction novels.
Okay.
And the old school ones that were a lot of just real tech stuff because they were really, like scientists back then. But it's interesting that you say that was the first thing that you were introduced into my stuff because I actually was offered X-Men.
Okay.
And turned it down to do this first.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I just love as an artist, I love challenges. Mm-hmm. And so, if you remember in the book, there's the story, and then there's this corner which has a subplot.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so that was written in the plot, and it was, so how am I going to do a sub thing? Mm-hmm. And then I thought of that, and I go, oh, wow. So I love challenges like that. Especially, I mean, after 30 years, drawing Wolverine or Superman or, over and over again, it's certain poses. Yeah. And, you don't get bored, but it becomes, a little monotonous. And so to have challenges like that, it's really cool and fantastic. But see, going back to your question about my style, it's really interesting because I'm one of those guys. When I was young, I was like a sponge, mm-hmm. And I was really bad. I mean, I'd buy a Jack Kirby comic, and I'd be drawing like Jack Kirby.
Okay.
And then the next day, I'd buy a Neil Adams comic, and I'd be drawing like Neil Adams, And even though I mean, that's a certain skill level, right? Mm-hmm. And even though I like that I achieved that, I didn't like that I didn't have a style.
Okay.
And so, just timing, my dad, who was in the U.S. Navy, he retired and brought us back to the Philippines. We were raised here, so we went back over there, and there were no more comic book stores. And I was in that mindset, okay, I got to get my style. And so, believe it or not, I Spock thought it out, and I go, okay, I packed all my comic books, put them in a suitcase, stuffed them in my closet, and never looked at a comic book again until
you got your look.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I forced myself to not, mimic or remember anything. Get into the mind frame of, okay, how am I going to do this pose I've never done before?
Yeah. Now, your work, I mean, with Legion of the Night, there's horror stuff in there. You mentioned before you love sci-fi. I think some of those sort of like technical aspects really started to fold over into your X-Men work. The cyber eye, if you will, that we see in your Uncanny run.
Well, if you talk to other actually it's science fiction.
Yes. Yes.
Sci-fi is a modern term. If you talk to a lot of science fiction guys, and what it really is about is world building. So you build a world that has transporters, mm-hmm. and the technology is based on, let's say, energy or whatever. Okay. Now, what else? What other technology would would sprout out of that kind of energy technology.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean? So what are the bad side of that? I mean, is there fallout? Is there, you know? And so you build that world, and then you have to follow those rules. So when I got into comics, which is great for a creator because you're kind of a semi-god, you know? If I wanted Michelle Pfeiffer in my, you know, comic book, she has no choice. I'm gonna draw her. You know, I don't have to talk to her agent first. Right. If I want it to rain, it's gonna rain. And so, for a science fiction guy, it's great because now I can just go crazy. Because there are, especially in superheroes, there's no parameters, there's no limitations. And so that's why, on the X books, you saw us go all over the place. Yeah. Following all of our influences, Lord of the Rings, Cybertech was starting back then. Visually, it was actually starting with the Japanese, with their manga, with what's
Robotech and stuff like that?
No, it was Macross. Yeah. And then Appleseed.
Oh, okay.
Somebody sent us the mangas for that, and we went crazy over that stuff. And then somebody sent us this is how long the VHS tape of Macross, Oboete Mas or something like that. And that was the first time we saw mechs.
Yeah.
And we were actually some of the first people in the U.S. to see those mechs.
That's so interesting because, you know, I don't necessarily think about you as being a guy who always likes to draw robots necessarily, but you can kind of see that influence because a lot of your characters have cybernetic components to them or tech around them.
Well, I'll tell you I mean, again, I've already said it twice that I got a Spock brain and I love science fiction, world building. What appealed to me in the Macross movie was the very first time that mech transformed. Because it wasn't, Transformers in the movies today are really good, but it's kind of magic.
Right.
You know, but when you saw that mech in Macross transform, you knew it worked. And then when they started selling the toys and you bought the toy and it worked, it really, that's what appealed to me, that it actually works. So like whenever I do tech, whenever I try to build a costume or a power, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
That's why then, a lot of people love my Iceman. And it was just all out of that kind of a thinking. Okay, he's ice. He would condense. How would the atmosphere would affect him? The different temperatures would affect him. And so that's what I drew in there. I didn't just. My brain wouldn't let me just draw a square-headed guy who was ice.
Now, I think from all of the work that you've done in the X world, obviously the character that you're most renowned for is the creation of Bishop.
Yeah.
Have you sort of kept up with what Bishop has done over the decades, or are you not interested in what people do with your creation?
I'm scared.
Yeah? Okay.
Well. Here's a not an unknown fact. You got to go back to the timeline. Okay, so I get. They decide to split up the books to make two strike teams, right?
Yep.
So that's 281, and then in the middle of 281, they go, "Oh, Wolverine's on the other side, so you need a new powerful."
Yeah.
Okay, so I create in 2 weeks, while doing 281, Bishop. Get that approved, and then go, okay, put him in number 282. So I put him in 282, and that's when Jim Lee and Todd approached me for Image.
Wow.
And then so right after 282, we announced our departure.
Yeah.
And then Marvel goes, okay, but you got to give us 2 more issues. I think 2 or 3 issues. I forget exactly how many. And so we did 2 more. So I only did like a couple Bishop issues.
Right.
Okay, so Marvel on the East Coast, my editor Bob Harris, I'm on the West Coast. So when he calls me and says create a new hero in 2 weeks, I go okay in the West Coast. 2 weeks later, I get on the phone, pitch it to him verbally. He goes, good. What's his name? Bishop. Good. Okay, put him in the next issue. I drop the phone and I draw.
Right.
The only thing Marvel aka Bob Harris knows is my verbal pitch. And then 3 months later, I quit. See why I'm scared?
Yeah.
Because they actually don't know what I was doing with Bishop, what I intended for him.
Okay.
So, which is why then people ask me, so what I think about the movie, and the visual obvious thing is everybody talks about the dreadlocks.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that I've only done, I think, 3 issues of Bishop, but his personality, the way his power is set up, and that he's an older X-Men, is in the movie. And so I'm happy that my issues, I'd like to think that my issues somehow superseded all the other ones to get into the movie.
Well, let me ask you about that a little bit, because I think I may have shared this with you last year. I actually do a X-Men fan comic called Bish and Jubes.
Oh!
It's about Bishop and Jubilee going on, like, silly adventures. Now, my impression of the character has always been, and this may not be due to, you know, what your intentions are,
right.
that he was sort of this gruff, militaristic guy, but at the same time, he was also, like, the ultimate X-Men fanboy to a certain extent, because he comes from a future where those characters were revered and worshipped.
Right.
Is that in line with what you wanted out of the character?
See, that's why I'm afraid it's almost.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to go back then to that phone call. Okay, Bob Harris's only parameters was, okay, your team is considered underpowered a little bit, so you need a badass dude like Wolverine. Okay, now
I would just like to note that's a little silly, given that Storm, Colossus, are on your team. But go ahead.
Well, it's also, I mean, one real big lesson of the Professor X is it's how you use the power.
Yes.
And how you, and you know, I mean, you could have a power and not understand how it can be used in other ways.
Right.
You know. So, anyways, so it was a badass guy like Wolverine. Now, believe it or not, I mean, I'm a Navy brat, so that's why you see all this military stuff in my stuff. Believe it or not, one of the lessons that I learned very quickly because of the military influence, you know, I've known Navy SEALs, I know somebody in Team 6 and stuff like that. And one thing you understand is these are the guys that are not the stereotype hoo-ha, you know? These guys do the real stuff. They see the real life, you know? And so these are warriors that are trying to stop that from happening again, you know? So when I was told, like Wolverine, my perception, especially at that time, remember, that was when he was bursting out. He originally appeared earlier, but nothing really happened.
Yeah.
But only when he went psychotic and was proclaimed that he could step over the line.
Yeah, go berserker.
Right. See, that didn't work for me military-wise because those guys aren't that.
Yeah.
If those guys are berserkers and can freak out and can blow up emotionally, they're not going to be very effective. You know? I mean, like, another thing about the SEALs is you don't really see huge, tall guys because they understand bullets kill. So they understand cover. They understand how to survive. And if you're a huge guy, there's very few places to hide.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So if you've seen SEALs or Spec Ops guys, a lot of them are on the quote-unquote smaller size.
Yeah.
So anyways, going back then to Bishop, I then go, okay, how can I do a badass guy, but that's not psychotic? Because again, psychotic, if you follow that realistically through, he either kills himself or he just goes bonkers.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you sustain a military guy that way? And so I started thinking like Navy SEALs and Spec Ops. And then I started thinking Philippines. Because even though I was raised here, I was starting to get into my own heritage. And I started to find out that we have a lot of, I mean, in different fields, music, billiards, sports and stuff. And a lot of our top guys are those kind of guys that are like sponges there where their skill set is it just seems to come easy to them.
Yep.
And because it seems to come easy to them, that's not what that's not their life.
Yeah.
Their life is beyond that because it's easy. If it was hard, they'd have to concentrate on it. They'd have to keep practicing and stuff like that. So I go, how do I get a character like that? And I instantly thought of Days of Future Past. If you're in Days of Future, my supposition was if you're in Days of Future Past and you survive to like 10 years old or 15 years old, that means you have this, you're innately born with the skill set to survive. So I was thinking, then Conan, another favorite of mine through the book, so if we have somebody in battle, born in battle like that, a mutant, and he's able to survive back, that now is like the Filipino thing, comes easy to him because it's his DNA. It's just innate with him.
Yeah.
And so my bishop really is somebody who appears gruff because he's from a more gruffer world, but in that world, he's actually not a gruff guy. I mean, you get the standard is different.
Yeah.
You know, so in that world of Days of Future Past, he does his job because it's easy. He's got what he has to do. It's what the whole community survival depends on that. And then at the end of the day, he comes home. He goes, "Where's the party?" Because again, he doesn't want to then spend the rest of his day thinking about battle.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about the harshness of the world. If not, then he'd go crazy, right? Just constantly mulling over how unfair the world is.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why, and the other parameter that Bob gave me was make sure that his personality made the other members on the team react to him in some way.
Yes.
So think about it. A powerful big dude who just loves life. So he feels really comfortable in his manliness because, hey, I don't have to brag I'm going to kill you. You're going to be dead soon, you know. And I can be so relaxed with women, with social situations and stuff because that's what I concentrate on. Mm-hmm. So imagine then Peter next to him, Petrov. The man boy.
Yeah.
He's big and huge like him, but he's unsure of his manliness. He's not yet mature enough yet. So Peter would be kind of like unease. How come it's so easy for him and I can't even talk to Jubilee right now?
Yeah.
And so on and so on with the rest of the team. I just use that stereotype with that character set with Bishop. And if you look through all the rest of the team, the rest of the team would have reacted to that. And that is the secret of Bishop. Well, the secret of another character, a new character going into an ensemble. It's an ensemble. They work together. So this guy can't be totally new.
Right.
He has to be again, there are like Peter. There has to be people that he can balance out. And then he fits in the ensemble. If not, then he becomes a villain or he becomes an outsider. But see that again, that's my Spock brain just analyzing things. I didn't go, okay, this is a character I've been thinking about for 10 years and then try to squish the square peg into the
Yeah. Now, despite maybe not following Bishop's timeline, you have done a lot of X-Men work this year. You did an issue of Major X. You've done a lot of variant covers. Are you happy to be back, into the X universe?
Yeah, especially coming in through doing that issue of Major X. That was one Providence and two very easy. Believe it or not, that day I was going, okay, it's 19 years after my diabetic coma, and I think I brought my skill sets back there. Now, can I do a month, an issue again in a month?
Yeah.
And Rob called up the next day.
That's serendipitous.
Yeah, and it's it was easy too because, see, no matter what you may think of Rob, you gotta give him he's successful, and he's done so much with characters and he's seen them through. Okay, now the other part of it is because of that, he's also a writer and a creator, not only being an artist. So when an artist writes, he writes in the language of an artist. So he's writing and he's going, oh, I would need a page for this. Oh, a splash needs to be here. And that's the same way my brain works.
Okay.
Our brains work the same
language.
Yeah, so even though it was the very first script I've ever worked on off of Rob's, it was just like, getting on a bicycle again.
That's great. I'm glad it was a good experience.
No, it was fantastic. I mean, especially in this day and age. I mean, not to do one little tiny rant. Back in the day when the numbers were better, interestingly enough, publishing-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, X-Men, you were doing 300,000, 400,000 a month. But interestingly enough, comics wasn't saturated yet in society, right? It was only us.
Yeah.
Right? So back then, upstairs didn't really bother us. So when you proved that you could do the job to the editors kind of let you play.
Yeah.
We got art, we got the cover. That's the big incentive. Because especially for a collector, you could sell that for a lot of money, and the interior page is a lot less, depending on what book and what artist it is. But that's, again, the incentive. And then you talk with the writers over the phone. I used to talk for hours with Louise Simonson. And this is before the internet or cell phones and everything. So it was an actual effort, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, where each character can be a multi-million-dollar property and IP.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, remember back then when I got an X-Men, I changed the costumes. When Jim got X-Men, he changed the costumes. When Mark got on, he changed the costumes. That was unwritten law. I mean, you didn't totally change it, but you could adjust the costume to your style.
Right.
Now you can't even change the curlicue on Superman. It's money.
It's a little more sacred.
Yeah. So now, because the money factor comes in so much, upstairs is really, really keen on, okay, where are we going with this? How are you going to get there? Before, it just used to be go there, and if the sales go down, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
But that's the only time they came in back then. So it is a different
world.
But you gotta, like everything else, you gotta push and pull, you gotta trade off, because now, I mean, look at these conventions. I mean, I'm going, next week I'm in Manila.
Oh, that's awesome.
Last month I was in Korea. So that's what, global awareness of superheroes has given me, but, on the business side, it's a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Man.
I really appreciate it. All right, I am here with Germán Peralta, the illustrator of my favorite Age of X-Man book, Prisoner X, and also the upcoming Strike Force, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you excited about Strike Force?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? It's a very cool team that you have there.
Yes.
One of the things that really struck me about Prisoner X is your facial expressions. How do you capture facial expressions so well?
Well, thank you. I didn't know it. And I'm trying to put a different expression. It's something obvious, but I'm trying to put a different expression in each character, right? So there's a funny one, an angry one, and I try to act myself those expressions. I try to put in that characters and take some pictures, or I search. But something funny is that when I search in internet for reference, there are some bad actors.
Yeah.
So the expressions are not what I'm looking for. So I try to act myself, and I am really bad at acting. But I try to put what I know in drawing and mix it with my expressions. So I try to play.
So there's a little bit of you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Vita and I were looking at the page that you gave her. It has Bishop in original 90s mode. You know, he's very angry. But then in the bottom, it's him in the present in the story. He just has this look of utter bewilderment on his face. So do you keep a mirror handy? You do photo reference?
Yeah, photo reference and a mirror too. And try to make that expression, because, like you said, Bishop is like surprised every time, but it's a strong character, so it's expression that we don't see every time in those characters. Something similar with Cable in Cable Conspire with Valenada and Zach Thompson was a very huge character with guns and everything, but in that arc it was so expressive, and it was hard to find that mix, but I think it works. I think.
One of the other things that I think you do very, very well is environments. So in Prisoner X, you have this cell-like structure that they're in, this prison that they're in, that doesn't look like a real prison, but you basically have to invent what that world looks like. So what's that process like for you?
Well, what's hard, because I like to make backgrounds with a lot of textures and spots and splatter and all the things, but it has to be clean and simple.
Yeah.
So I was afraid, because my style is the contrary, and I was afraid that people think that I was being lazy. But it was hard for me, because I am not so clean with my lines and all the things. So I was trying to make all the backgrounds clean. That's why in the characters are gray, but sometimes in the background don't. And every background change with the minds of the characters. Like this is a zoo and Bishop is a prison, but Gabby is a school. So I was trying to make that difference, and I hope it works.
It was pretty successful, I would say. Now, I think a lot of X fans loved Prisoner X, would love to see you come back to the X books. If you could, who are some characters that you would love to work with that you haven't yet?
Well, I'm a big fan of the villains, of the enemies.
The villains, yeah.
So I would like a lot. Even my last work, if it was my last work, I wish that it was that. Something with Apocalypse.
Apocalypse?
I love Apocalypse. Yeah. I don't know if this is a major character or a popular character, but I like the design. I really like to maintain the original costumes. So, because sometimes I feel in some companies, I will not say which, but I don't like to feel that the companies feel ashamed about his own characters.
Oh, really?
Because sometimes you see a big character using a more real costume just to fit with the reality, and that's a good thing. But you don't have to lose that thing that some people feel ridiculous. Come on, it's comics. We love that thing. We love the long capes and like why some characters need cape to fly. They don't need it, but it looks awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, like Thor. Thor is not the same without cape, so we need that cape.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because earlier today I got a chance to talk to Marcus Toe, who's working on the new Excalibur book, and Apocalypse is in that book.
Wow.
Now, he was saying that he's kind of redesigned the character to look almost ancient Egyptian. You know, with long, flowy robes. He said he almost wanted him to look like a pharaoh. I think that would be really fun. I mean, you would probably knock that out of the park to do a little Apocalypse story like that.
Yeah, but like you said, I'm not I don't know, angry is not the word. Sorry for my English. I'm not angry with those decisions to change the characters to fit in the story, like Apocalypse being a pharaoh. But I don't like this works with that story. But I hate when people like strike force. I see so many people angry with the customer and Jessica and Spider-Woman. And I don't know why. It's his costume. I love that costume. I know it's something strange to see, but it's cool to see in the original character.
Now with Strike Force,
yes.
You have characters. You have a really interesting cast there.
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorites that you've been drawing for that book?
Well, I love to draw Weekend. His corrections. I love Angela. It's a really hard custom. Custom is hard. So, but I love that. And Bucky, I love Bucky.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're at New York Comic Con. What are you most excited for in the next year that either you're working on or something you want to read? What are you excited about for comics?
Yeah, I always excited to talk with the editors and see what is the upcoming project. Now I have some numbers of Strike Force, so I'm trying to maintain my entity. But I'm just happy to be here. I'm from Argentina, and this is like almost like a dream to me, because actually I thought that I will never be up in a plane. So this is my 4th time in New York Comic Con, and it's amazing. Amazing that someone speaking another language. The principal here is the capital of the comics, and saying that he knows me, for me it's amazing. I am complete only with that.
Well, I got to say, Herman, I personally think you're one of the most talented artists in the business right now. I look forward to seeing what you're doing, and thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and again, I'm sorry for my English.
No, don't apologize. Your English is about 1 million times better than my Spanish, so thank you for your time. I'm here with Matt Rosenberg, writer of the last X-Men story ever in Uncanny X-Men.
Turns out that wasn't true, but...
Yeah, well, maybe not. And before that, Astonishing X-Men, Mumian's Dead Souls, and my personal fave, Multiple Man. Let's not talk X-Men for a second. I saw online that you actually just visited ILM.
Yes.
How was that?
It was... it's weird. I was a weird little kid, and I love Star Wars my whole life. And I think because my parents worked in film and television, like, I never had that, like, Santa Claus isn't real moment. Like, I knew where movies came from.
Yeah.
So I was in love with Star Wars, but I was also in love with the idea of Star Wars getting made. So from a very young age, like, visiting Lucasfilm and ILM was, like, very big deal for me in a way that, like, I think is very weird. And, so I went last week to the Lucasfilm campus and ILM, and I had the thing that the morning of where I was like, I built this up in my head way too much, and, like, this is an office where people work, who you work with, like, just, it's going to be an office work trip, and it was so awesome, and I was, like, geeking out, and I had to, like, remember to breathe and stuff. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine seeing an actual Porg in a case, or, some of the old original stuff. It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah, and, like, they're just such, like, ILM has done so much, like, touched so much awesome stuff. So there's, like, stuff from Die Hard and Cocoon and, like, just, like, stuff where you're like, oh, yeah, I forget, like,
War of the Worlds. Your entire childhood is there on display,
like,
right?
Yeah, and it's just, like, so amazing to be like, oh, yeah, there's E.T., but also, like, stuff from The Abyss and Rocketeer and Ant-Man, and you're just like, oh, it's just, like, they're just amazing geniuses, so, like, being around them is inspiring.
I can imagine that would be completely overwhelming. I didn't know that your family was in film and television. What kind of stuff did they do?
My dad is a writer. He wrote a lot of TV. He wrote a lot of TV movies, and some network TV a while back. He's also written a lot of novels and stuff. And my mom was an editor, a book editor, but she wrote a movie. So,
oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Do they, like, give you feedback?
Yeah.
It must be a little disconcerting to have an editor mother.
My mom is not... my mom's funny. She wrote a movie called Maniac. It's a really terrible slasher film. Really horrific and pretty offensive.
And then in the 40 years since she wrote that, she has softened a lot. So I spent a lot of time telling her what I'm going to do in a book, and she just goes, "Why does it have to be so mean? Why is it sad, though?" And then I have to be like, "Mom, you shot a lady in the face in her car. Like, leave me alone."
Now I'm going to go and see if I can watch that.
It's terrible.
That's okay. Every once in a while you need a not so great movie, right?
Sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your X-Men stuff, because you have really been a pretty big architect in the line over the last 2 years, I would say, between Multiple Man, Dead Souls, and then going into Uncanny. I'm a huge fan of the Multiple Man book.
Thank you.
But I can also imagine at the same time that was a challenging script to write, given that almost every character in your book is the same character, sort of. Like, how do you approach that as a writer?
I mean, there was a point when I was talking to Marvel, and I was like, yeah, the fun of the book is that at the end of the day, every character is one character, and the whole thing, because the time travel takes place in around 11 minutes. And they looked so distraught when I told them that. But then when I started working on it, I was like, but it's kind of a cop-out, because, I mean, in Peter David's run, he establishes really well that, like, every dupe is sort of his own facet of the personality.
Right.
So, like, yes, they're all Jamie, but, like, if you're writing them all the same, you're not doing your job right.
They're all unique Jamies.
Yeah, and so it's fun to, like, write a bunch of the same character, but be like, what? This one's a little different, this is a little different. And that was sort of the most fun. I mean, I love Jamie as a character. Peter David's X-Factor is, if it's not in your top 5 favorite Marvel Comics runs of all time, like, I don't know what you're reading. But it's, so, like, just getting to play with him is always a thrill. And yeah, but it was a very complex book. I have a lot of charts and graphs, and we were going to put a lot of them in the trade, because I literally had to, my original editor, Christina Harrington, like, I handmade charts to be like, this is him. Like, he's the villain and the,
right.
the protagonist and the antagonist of the story at different times. And, like, here he is here. And, like, and I had all these charts, and we were going to put them in the trade. And then I was like, maybe it's better to not show how the songs are just made.
Well, I can almost imagine that, like, for Andy McDonald having to sort of communicate which one is which, it's almost like you needed a serial number system or something,
Yeah,
like,
we had, I put shorthand nicknames, and I was always like, we should have real nicknames for them. And then I had these shorthand nicknames, and Andy, who is the absolute best person in the universe and my favorite, he actually made trading cards for us that are them.
What a great idea.
And he put the, like, script nicknames, so they're all, like, fake Hulk and fake Doctor Strange. And I was like, that wasn't really for the public to know that that's what we call them, but that was the simplest shorthand.
Now, you followed up Multiple Man with what I consider another stone-cold classic, which is the Dead Souls, New Mutants.
Thank you.
Now, I think one of the things that took a lot of readers back was that this was not just going to be this sort of isolated, start and finish in the same place. At what point did you know, was it part of the pitch that it was going to end on this cliffhanger?
It's a complicated thing. That book was in flux a lot.
Okay.
There was a lot of sort of editorial and regime changes. But me and Adam Gorham, who drew it, when we knew we were going to do 6 issues and then go on to something else, I talked to him and I said, I want to make the real pitch. There's a thing in Marvel fandom, which is very alien to me and the way I approach my fandom, but is a very real thing, which is the idea that miniseries don't count.
Yeah.
That people are like, well, it doesn't fundamentally change characters. It doesn't. You can skip it. And I view all of it as entertainment. So my answer is always, did you enjoy it? Then it counted. Like, that's the bottom line. But that's not how everyone reads the books. And I made a plea to Marvel, and I was like, if we're going to do these as miniseries, like, let's make them count for the people who don't think miniseries count. Like, let's change status quo, let's shake things up. And I knew that I was staying with X-Men for a while, and I could follow things up. And part of it, I had a long talk with them where I said, look, I grew up on Claremont. Like, that's, the idea of, like, threads dangling and being revisited in a few years, and this thing you thought was a nothing moment coming back and being major. And I said, we can't do that anymore because no one's doing these 5-year, 10-year runs. And I said, but I think I can do it. I can thread it through all these miniseries where, like, you don't have to read them. They're standalone. Multiple Man's a standalone book. The New Mutants a standalone book. Phoenix Resurrection's a standalone book. But if you do read them, you realize that there's a through line and a tapestry. It's part of this bigger tapestry. And I knew we were heading towards Uncanny, and I could bring it all to a close there. So, like, yeah, I mean, it was... They were nervous about it. Marvel was really nervous about it. But I was like, look, I'm doing Astonishing X-Men. You're going to see them again. Like, this isn't going to die. You'll see them on Astonishing. You'll see them on Uncanny. We're not going to leave this for some other writer to ignore.
So if I can ask, like, when you're actually working on Dead Souls, you're already aware of the fact that you're going to be part of the disassembled plotline? Or did you
We didn't know what it exactly was. We knew, like, Jonathan was coming to do House of X and Powers of 10, and we knew that. And so there was a, like, something is coming, and you guys are going to have to knock everything down so he can build it back up.
Yeah.
So we didn't know it was going to be Uncanny and Disassembled, and that shifted, but we knew it was going to be something, because me and Kelly and Ed were all, like, doing a lot of X stuff, so we were the people. And they came to us and said, what is it going to be? Initially, Disassembled was going to just be the end.
Interesting. Okay.
And then what came out of it was going to be a part of the Age of X-Man.
Okay.
And I was going to do I pitched a thing called The World Without X-Men. That was going to be Wolverine and Cyclops. And then they were like, well, this is going to be Uncanny now. And so you're going to keep going. And Your World Without X-Men is going to be the second act of it. So
that's really interesting because I think your run on Uncanny may have been received differently if it had been sort of a mini series or,
yeah, I mean, it's funny the, like, perception of things because it's constantly shifting, sort of.
Yeah.
Because, I have people who are like, oh, I didn't know you knew what Jonathan was going to do. And it's like, no, he was hired before I did. Like, we heard his pitch before we sat down to work. Like, and so I was like, no, I was setting up things in motion. They wanted it to go to a dark place and all these things. And people were like, oh, that's interesting. And they're like, so it's part of it. And I was like, well, it's not part of it. Like, Jonathan's is Jonathan's, mine's mine. But, like, they're all X-Men. Like, it's part of it in the same way that Joss Whedon's is part of it and Grant Morrison's is part of it. Like, they're all X-Men.
Right.
Marvel doesn't reboot, so it's all there. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Fans, it's my Uncanny run is a very divisive thing among fans, which is... in some ways, it's very fun to be that. It's always, people get really heated and I don't want people to be angry. But I hope they see now what Jonathan's doing and are like, oh, I'm very excited because it's awesome. But, I have people every day, like, I'm here and I'm signing Uncanny and they're just like, oh, I love it so much and it's this and... it means this much to me, and so it's interesting to see the different reactions to it. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there have been some vocal detractors, but you were very clear about the thesis statement of what that book was going to be from page 1 of issue 11.
Yeah.
I don't think you were misleading anybody into thinking that this was going to be some, like, cheery, peppy thing. It was going to be dark, and you were telling the last story of that era.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, Marvel's marketing was very clear that it was like the end of an era. This is, it's Stan and Jack, and then it's, I don't remember what they said the eras were, Stan and Jack, and then Giant Size, #1, and then Age of Apocalypse, and then Grant, and like by Marvel's term, I would define the eras of X-Men a little differently, I think, than what they came up with. But by their definition, like I was ending the Grant Morrison era, and Grant Morrison era opened with 8 million mutants dying, and it closed with 14 of your favorites dying.
So let me pose you this, because it does seem that even throughout this creative process of working on these various books, you have an idea that the Hoxpox stuff is coming.
Sure.
You know that train is coming to town, but this is still like, for you probably writing Uncanny has got to be like a huge dream assignment. Yeah. So do you feel like you got everything you wanted out of doing that run, or do you still feel like you would have had more to tell,
Oh, I mean, X-Men's my favorite. I was going to say comic, but X-Men and Star Wars are my 2 favorite works of fiction, works of art in the world. So, I mean, I could always tell more, but I knew, when I started writing X-Men, I sort of had this very ambitious, loose dream of, like, to me, I think there's, like, I don't want to give too much of sort of my thought process away, but there's 5 or 6 types of X-Men books that are very, you recognize them and you know what they are. And I did my best to sort of, other than space ones, to try and tell one of each.
Okay.
And so, like, people are like, oh, Multiple Man reminds me of Ecstatics. And it's like, okay. And then they're like, New Mutants is very much like the old New Mutants, kids in over their heads, like, in a world they don't understand. And I was like, yeah, but, like, I also, like, look at New Mutants, like, I wanted it to feel a little like a book like District X or like that, or like, deal with some of those corners. And Astonishing is the lovable loser story, and Phoenix Resurrection is the big soap opera, love affair, personal tragedy, spotlight on a character kind of stuff. And, for me, like, the Claremont run is a lot of things, but, like, the defining thing of Chris Claremont's run for me as a child when I read it was, like, it was the only comic I read where, like, you were scared. Like, you read each issue being like, I don't know if they make it out of this. Like, the Avengers, save the world at the end of the day because there's going to be another comic next week. The X-Men, it's like, they're not trying to save the world, they're trying to survive. They're fighting to survive, and they don't always do it. And, like, from, Mutant Massacre and the Outback Saga and all these, Extinction and all these amazing runs, like, they're terrifying and they're heartbreaking. And, like, they take you to a really dark place and then they pull you out of it at the last second, and they survive because they fight. And I was like, that'll be my last thing. It's like the dark, heartbreaking, scary one. And I said to Marvel, I was like, I'm going to write like I'm never going to write these characters again because I don't know. I'm going off to do other things. I spoke to Jonathan a little bit about coming on and doing stuff in Dawn of X, and I just, Jonathan's amazing and super sweet, and he was like, let me know what you want to do, and I'm such a fan of his and what he's doing, and I said, I think I told my story for now, and I want to be a fan again. And so I wrote like that. I wrote to end it for me, for now, so I can be a fan. So that was sort of my approach.
There's something so bittersweet about all of this. There were concepts that you got a chance to play with that, probably needed a little bit more breathing room, and that's not a criticism of your writing. One of the characters that I'm absolutely fascinated by, which seems, I still don't know if Hickman is picking up on this thread at all, is the idea of what Soul did with X.
Sure, yeah.
The idea of Professor X's psyche, but not his soul, not his body, not his brain, because those have been dealt with separately in the body of Phantom X, and you did get to play with that a little bit.
I really loved when I picked up Astonishing from Charles. I was like, I want a clean break. Like, he had a 12-issue story to tell, trying to extend his story isn't fair to him.
Yeah.
But then he had X, and so I called him, and I'm friends with Charles, and I was like, I really like X, and he's like, I want him around, I want him to see more, and I was like, okay. So I put him in the annual, because I think he's a modern. Charles is a very reading 1960s X-Men. You kind of win Charles makes you cringe a little bit. You wince at some of the things where you're like,
yeah.
Oh wow!
Still does.
Yeah, still does, and I love that. And I don't ever want to be like Charles Xavier's a villain. I don't think he is.
Right.
But he's a man playing a game at a level that we're not meant to understand it, and he's making choices that we're not meant to be okay with. And to me, X is that character, but he doesn't try and hide it anymore. He's and I think that's really fun, and the chance to take the original 4 in this case. And tell that was really awesome. I had more X plans that I wanted to do, and then we sort of agreed that we didn't have the space and we didn't have the room for it.
So that was never going to get visited as part of the Uncanny run? It's okay. You don't have to tell me.
Early on, it became not what we were going to do, but it was...
originally an idea?
It was an idea that was definitely talked about a lot. Me and Jordan went over it a lot.
Yeah.
Jordan White.
I'm still fascinated by, what the through line is there. Because I still, in my brain, am still trying to, put the roadmap together to get to where Hickman is right now.
Sure, yeah.
Especially with, I'm assuming you're reading it, right?
Yeah, of course.
You're enjoying it.
Yes,
all of the more McTaggart stuff and, there being multiple different, so we've got, I don't even want to get into it. It's too complicated. Sure. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. Aside from X-Men, did I hear correctly that 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank is a screenplay that you're working on right now? Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't really talk much about it.
Okay.
But there's a movie in development.
All right.
For sure.
Very cool.
And we're really excited about it. It's sort of been a bunch of places and been with a bunch of people and screenwriters and, these things happen or they don't. And I'm a comic book writer. That's my love. And so me and Tyler Boss sort of don't pay much attention. But it's actually gotten to a place where we're after a couple of years, it's gotten to a place where we're actually very excited about it.
Very cool. Well, I hope it works out. I would love to see that story up on the screen in some way. You're friends with a lot of people in the industry, right?
I guess.
Seeing you talking to a lot of people. Last question: what are you most excited about? I mean, we're here at New York City Comic Con. There's announcements galore. Let's say the next year, what's your big thing that you're just pumped for?
Man, one thing.
It could be anything. It could be even something you're working on.
I'm very excited for a book I'm announcing next week.
Okay, so let's stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that. Man, I'm excited for a lot. I am really, really loving what Ed Brisson's doing on Ghost Rider is great. Really loving what Kelly is doing. What you all are going to see she's doing with Deadpool. It literally... She messages me ideas, and I'm laughing for 2 minutes about them. They're so good.
What a great combination too with Chris, right?
Yeah, it's just awesome. But so much stuff. Marvel is doing amazing work. In every corner. Donnie on Venom and Al on Hulk and Mark Waid on Doctor Strange and Jason and obviously all the X stuff. A lot of the upcoming X writers are very close friends of mine. Vita and Teeny and. They're just awesome, and I could not be more excited to see what they do. And I'm really excited for James Tynion on Batman.
Oh, okay.
So good. If ever there was a dude who earned a book by just doing the work and having the passion for it, it's James. So I can't wait to see that. I don't know, all the stuff Vault is putting out is awesome. I've been really digging their books and. I don't know, I'm blanking on a million things.
No, that's a pretty great list.
Yeah, I mean, I spend way too much money in the comic shop every week, and like don't regret any of it. So I know that it's like a great time to be a comics fan, and I don't know, it's really fun.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope you have a great rest of the weekend.
We'll see.
All right, I am here with Adriano Di Benedetto, who is currently inking RB Silva's pencils on Powers of 10.
Yes.
Adriano, I think I first encountered your work with RB Silva in X-Men Gold. How long have you guys been working together?
We've actually been working together since 2015. We did an independent book. It was actually my first professional work.
Okay.
With RB, and he really appreciated what I did with the inking. The next year when he started doing the Nova, we did 3 issues. He just called me. I was like, "Will you be up to do that?" I'm like, "No brainer for me. Work for Marvel."
Yeah.
Duh.
So what's your working relationship like with RB?
We usually talk a lot. We both enjoy a lot of music, so he plays drums and I play guitar. So we used to do when we finished a full issue, I would go to his town, which is 40 minutes from mine, and we jam.
Oh my god!
Just yeah.
Please tell me there are recordings of this band.
We used to just
jam?
riffs and not full songs because neither of us sing.
Oh, okay.
But we used to do we did a live on Instagram. People seem to enjoy that.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. That'd be great. Now, do both of you work just completely traditional with actual pencils? And I'm looking at your table, pen and ink. How are you working?
Yeah, I always work traditional. Mm-hmm. RB sent me the digital pencils. He always does everything on the Cintiq, everything full digital. And I will receive it by email or Dropbox. Print it out, 11 by 17 on blue lines and ink it. So the inks are traditional, so I have the original.
So do you ever, go back and edit anything digitally, or is it all traditional from start
Sometimes
to finish?
if we have something from the editor,
okay.
This uniform, the costume should be different, this character shouldn't be there. Sometimes RB send me the pencil, sometimes he corrects it all on digital.
Now, I think a lot of people have compared your work with RB to the pair of Stuart Immonen and Wade von Graubadger, which, huge compliment. Are they a big influence on you guys?
Oh, they always is. If you get 10 artists here, 8 out of 10 are influenced by Immonen. He's such a great artist.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to love his stuff, right? Now, one of the things that I've noticed with Powers of 10 is it seems like it's a huge artistic leap forward for both of you guys. The amount of detail that you're pouring into each page, the sets, the facial expressions, everything about it just seems to have evolved. Do you feel like you guys have personally kind of stepped it up for this particular run?
I believe it's always an evolution.
Yeah.
That's important. That's what you seek as an artist. And with the scripts take us so many different places, so many different eras.
Yeah.
Then if RB didn't step up, it would feel. You see what Pepe is doing, and we got his page. We should keep it up because he's also a fantastic artist.
So do you feel like you're competing with Pepe in terms of?
No, it's friendly. It was like on Formula One, there's 2 drivers on the same team.
Yeah.
So we're
okay. Because I gotta say, Pepe Larraz, I think for me is one of the best in the business right now.
Totally agree. Totally.
But you guys have your Powers of 10 books. I think in some cases are better.
Thank you.
I absolutely loved it, and I think you guys have some unique challenges with your book. Whereas House of X is primarily, just about the events on Krakoa.
Yeah.
You guys are dealing with multiple timelines.
Yes.
Very futuristic stuff. You've got phalanx to draw. So, what are those challenges like for you guys?
I believe the first one was understanding what the script was about.
That's fair.
Yeah. I got the first issue, so like, page 1, we have 4 different time zones. What's going on? But we did some, RB is starting to do his own inking from now on.
Oh.
So we did like half of the first issues. So the thing with the phalanx, he did all digital. So he can play with his brushes and do a lot of things that would like make me crazy if this was up to me. So I'm glad it kind of happened.
Okay. But you guys are still collaborating, right?
No, this is our final work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, beyond inking, do you do your own pencils? Do you do your own original artwork?
Yeah, I do only on conventions. I do some sketching, but like small head sketches and busts on sketch covers. But I've alwaed penciled like since I was a child. I mean, everyone who loves comic books sometime in their lives should like maybe picked up a pencil and started inking. Then I went forward to inking. People was like, "Oh, your drawings are good, but your inking is better. You should focus on that." I was like, "Oh, well, okay, I'll give it a try." And then when I started using brushes, I was like, "Oh, this is it." So
I'm seeing some. Are these watercolor brushes?
Yeah,
what do you prefer to use?
These are Winsor Newton brushes.
Okay.
People usually do watercolor, but a lot of inkers use that.
Yeah. So you're all brushes, no nibs or
No,
anything like that?
I do a lot of microns, and I used to do rapidographs.
Yeah.
But they are like rechargeable, and
it's too much.
Too much for me.
Okay. So, what's next for you? You know, if RB isn't, going to be, if he's going to be doing his own stuff, what's on your palette?
I'm going for a while to DC to work on.
Really? Cool.
It wasn't announced yet. But
I can edit that out.
I would just say that I'll go to DC.
Okay.
We won't share the title.
All right.
But it's a very short story. Then I'm coming back to Marvel to work with Jorge Molina again.
Whoa, awesome.
Because we did the War of the Realms, Land of Giants there. And
I loved the War of the Realms book. I thought that was absolutely amazing. That also had some unique, interesting challenges to it, too. You're drawing, like, giant frost giants and,
horses.
killer dogs.
And the horses.
Horses are like an artist's nightmare, right?
Yeah, people say the worst thing you could draw is horses, but Pegasus is worse because it's a horse with wings. It's like...
Yeah, I can see that being a problem. Out of all of your work in Powers of 10, did you have a favorite character that you like to work on more than anybody else?
I always love working on Wolverine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at my banner
here.
It's
he's right here on your banner.
When people give me something to sketch, which one would you like to? Wolverine. I do Wolverine. Yeah.
Hey,
I really like doing his hair, his facial hair, like gritty stuff.
Well, it's also pretty funny in the script that, like, when you get to the future, everybody else is like this weird chimera, and then I was like, when Wolverine popped up, there was discussion. Well, who's he mixed with? And I was like, he's just Wolverine. Of course
he has like white beard.
Yeah, he's got a great beard. Well, Adriano, thank you so much for taking some time.
Thank you.
I hope you have
appreciate
a lovely weekend here at the con.
Thanks. Oh, it's been great so far.
I wish you the best. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's great. Let me just jump right in. I'm here with Abe Riesman, writer for New York Magazine and Vulture, renowned for his comics journalism.
Oh, shucks.
Abe is hard at work on a Stan Lee bio for Penguin Random House, which is due out in 2020.
Fall 2020 is the target. We'll
okay.
See if I can do it.
All right, so we're here at New York City Comic Con. You're running a bunch of panels. What do you think, comics journalism as a whole? I mean, we're sitting in this press area. What do you think about the current state of comics journalism?
Oh, geez. I wish it were better, and I think any comics journalist will tell you that, too. This is not me pointing fingers or naming names, but just, look, the resources aren't there, the readership isn't there, and as a result, you have this industry where it's kind of a democracy dies in darkness situation, where, like, you don't really have any robust, well-trained journalism operations holding this industry to account. And so all kinds of awful BS ends up happening. And, it's really... I'm sorry we're starting on such a negative note.
Go
but
for it.
I wish we could get to a place where you could have some kind of amalgamation of, like, the high quality writing of classic Comics Alliance with like the deep sourcing of Bleeding Cool and like the institutional resources that I have, you know, if you could sort of merge a lot and you know, the experience of say like a Heidi MacDonald and The Beat, if you could somehow swirl all of that together in some magic potion, you'd have something that I think would really change the industry, both for readers and for creators and professionals. And unfortunately, we don't have that right now. Well, you hear rumblings every time comics journalists get together. You know, these ragtag ragamuffins at cons. Everybody talks about like, okay, this is the year. We're going to do it. We're going to start a new comics news source, and it's going to be the good one. We're going to nail it. And I just have yet to see the Papa Moneybags pop up who can fund something like that. It's really too bad.
Well, it seems so driven by clicks and you know, Google ad counts.
Oh, God. Well, you have some places, again, I'm not going to name names, where it's just the most execrable, like, listicle crap.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just... Again, if I get into any more detail, people will know who the various sites I'm talking about. But
we all know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah. That being said, though, you know, I think I just came from a conversation with Matt Rosenberg where, you know,
a wonderful writer.
The quality of what's coming out, even from the major publishers, is really high
right now. The comics themselves?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some wonderful stuff out there right now.
Yeah, stuff that maybe deserves like some deeper analysis and
100%
isn't necessarily getting it.
There's good analysis. I feel like we're not lacking for people who are willing to, God bless them, write for no money, long essays about, okay, this is why this comic is interesting, or here's my theory about the underlying architecture of this comic. But what's lacking is nonfiction journalism, you know, is people getting sourced up, going through archives, going through records, getting people to talk to them behind the scenes, and putting together stuff that is not just analysis, as important as analysis is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about actual journalism.
Right, exactly, which sadly just doesn't get a play. Because then you have, you know, major places like, you know, the place I work, New York Magazine and Vulture, which I'm so lucky that they have allowed me to write the stuff that I've written. But like, you know, the person who was editing my comics stuff, wonderful editor, who was our music editor, left earlier this year. Oh God, was it last year? I can't remember. It's all blurring together since I've been working on this book. But a few months ago, he left, and I don't have anyone to edit my comics pieces. And that's not because Vulture is like a bad place to work for. It's just there's no incentive for them to hire a full-time comics editor.
That's true.
I just lucked out for a few years that we had this excellent music editor who happened to know a ton about comics. And so now I still get stuff published if it's like pegged to a movie or a TV show, because you can then, you know, have the movies editor or the TV editor look at it. But they don't have the deep, like, they're wonderful people, but they don't have the like decades of knowledge of this stuff, so they can't challenge me on things. They're sort of taking my word for it. And it's just unfortunate that you don't have those two ends meeting. The places that have the resources but don't necessarily have the readership, and the people who have the readership but not the resources.
Well, let's talk Fantasyland a little bit.
Okay, Fantasyland. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting all down in the dumps.
No, it's okay, because I think we all recognize that there are definitely issues with the industry. Yeah. You're doing a couple panels here at the con.
Yes. Both about the industry.
About the business of comics in general, editing.
Yes, and editing, yeah.
Are these areas that you're particularly fascinated by?
Oh, 100%. Especially, I mean, you know, it's a broad topic, the business of comics, quote unquote. But, you know, increasingly, what I find most invigorating about my wonderful, very lucky to have job is being able to report on the comics industry as a place of business, as opposed to the place where, like, my childhood dreams came true or whatever. Like, the more you report on an industry, the more disillusioned you get with it.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's hard for me to enjoy a given comic, because I'll be like, I've read so many goddamn comics that at this point this just feels formulaic and idiotic.
Right.
Or you'll like know things that are unsavory about a creator or something, and you're like, oh, I can't unknow that. It's hard for me to really just throw myself into this. Or there's the special thing that happens for people who do, comics journalists, which is if you had an unpleasant interaction with a creator, unfortunately that can kind of color your ability to consume their content. But the business itself, that never stops being interesting, because as a journalist you get a fair amount of cynicism, and that cynicism can really power you to look at something incisively and not with ruby quartz colored glasses. And thank you everybody. I'm still a geek, don't worry, I may be a cynic, but and it's really thrilling when you can kind of dig into how this place ticks. And so, the Business of Comics panel that I'm doing, we have editors and, people from Diamond and retailers. And it's just this way of looking holistically at how an industry that doesn't make a ton of money directly, but indirectly makes bajillions of dollars for other people outside of it. How that works. That ecosystem is so fascinating to me. That food chain is so fascinating to me. And so, and then the editing, that panel happened yesterday and it went really well. We had some really smart editors from various companies, various backgrounds, and that's just the invisible art. No one talks about editors. I mean, I led off the panel by talking about how, not to make it about me, but I'm writing this Stan Lee book, and what's fascinating to me is you can dispute so much about what Stan did as a writer. You can dispute so little about how good he was as an editor. He was a tremendously good editor. And yet, because editing is not a skill that people in comics, at least in the readership, or, oftentimes among professionals, really value, you don't get a sense of how important editing is. So we had a nice conversation, and I would say those are two areas that I get pretty passionate about.
I think it's very interesting that you're doing a panel on editing, but at the same time you're lacking a comic-specific editor.
Yeah, well, I know. It's
There's
too
some
bad.
irony to that.
I still have some good. I don't want to throw under the bus my wonderful editors that I do have. They're just busy and not as big geeks as I am.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your Stan Lee book, because I have always been a big fan of your work. I love your Steve Ditko piece, especially where you're actually going and knocking on his door to see if there's a response.
I caught a little heat for that, but I don't regret it.
No, you shouldn't. What has the research process been like for you in terms of...
The research process has been pretty wild. It's kind of insane what you can end up doing when you are not on a tight deadline. When you have... And I was very lucky that I'm writing for a wonderful publisher that was generous in giving me a good advance. So I've had resources to fly places and buy material and whatever. Once you have those boundaries kind of opened up for you, you'll be surprised the kinds of things you can fall neck deep into in a good way. So, for example, one of the first things I did as soon as I'm part-time at New York Magazine right now, because I wanted the flexibility to be able to focus on the book.
Sure.
So I'm still writing for them, but I'm not on staff for right now. And so one of the first things I did right after I went part-time was I did a 2-stage trip out west. I first went to the University of Wyoming, which bizarrely enough is where Stan's archives are housed.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people don't know that. Then right after I was done with that, I was there for a week. I then flew to Los Angeles to interview people that knew Stan and worked with Stan and attend this Stan tribute that happened. This was back in January. And that trip was kind of in microcosm a lot of what I've been doing, in that the book draws some on actual comics, but what I've tried to do, and we'll see how this shakes out. I'm still so far from this book actually coming out, but what I'm trying to do is not focus so much on the comics themselves as stories, because there's so much already written about that. I mean, these comics have been digested, well, I should say the famous comics of his have been digested to death. There's a lot of stuff that's more obscure that is interesting but hasn't been. But what I'm getting at is I want this book to be appealing to people who have no interest in comics.
Okay.
As well as people who have an interest in comics, but I would like there to be not so much bogging down in the material of sequential art, and instead going, okay, here's this guy who had this truly fascinating, very controversial life, and it has barely been explored. Like, there are people who know stuff in vague outline, there are people who know the hagiography. Very few people, including me before I really started digging into this, kind of have a sense of the full scope of this person's, almost 96 years on this planet. And it's the research has been largely, I've done more than 150 interviews for this thing.
Wow.
So a lot of interviews, a lot of going through, thousands of pages of documents from his archives and from other sources that I've gotten. Legal documents. There was a ton of legal trouble that he was in, both as an individual and as a part of his two post-Marvel companies, Stanley Media and POW Entertainment. So digging into all of that, it's kind of a cornucopia. Once you start looking, you can find a whole lot of stuff just kind of waiting for you, and then there's the stuff that isn't waiting for you that you really have to, dig for. And I have ADD, so research is not my favorite thing to do in the world. I much prefer writing because I'm actually, doing something.
Yeah.
I'm sort of the inverse of the average journalist, which is not a brag. It's a problem just the same as everybody has problems with their process. But I've been very lucky in that I've had a lot of interesting material to be able to go through and research. That's my long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's great, and I think it is a huge challenge because you are talking about someone who lived for almost 100 years.
Literally, almost 100 years. It's crazy.
And what you're saying in terms of what public perception is of his life, I feel like my best understanding of it is probably from Sean Howe's,
from Sean Howe's
Untold Story. But that's so much about the company.
Yes.
And he's about so much more than that.
So much more than that. And I adore that book. That book is in many ways the reason I'm a comics journalist today, because I read that and went you can write this way about this industry. And Sean's a good friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
And I have nothing but tremendous respect for him. And if anything, my fear is that there are going to be certain sections where let me put it this way, I'm really trying to one-up Sean, and it's hard because he did such a good job, but you have to sort of, he forces you to bring your A game when you're going through the stretches of material that he has written about.
Yeah.
But then I'm lucky because there's a ton of stuff that Sean, not through negligence in any way, didn't get into, because look, he was dealing with a cast of hundreds of people and telling the story of this company, much of which had nothing to do with, especially in the last 20 years of Stan's life, what was going on.
Yeah.
And then that's not even getting into something which I will not get into detail about because it is still a very evolving situation that I have not come to conclusions about. But then you get into the stuff that Sean couldn't have written about because it was the last year and a half of Stan's life when really awful stuff was going down. And, Sean doesn't have anything on that, and that's fine. He couldn't have, but that's a huge component of the latter third of my book, because not only was it just sort of, interesting, dramatic, blah, 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 it reveals a ton about Stan, and it was sort of the first time after, almost 96 years of living a very private life, abruptly his private life was all over the headlines. I mean, if you were looking, he wasn't the top story. We're living in Trump's world.
No, but there were, and that was actually something I wanted to ask you about. Was researching the history of his early years is probably a lot. I don't want to say easier, but you're dealing with I feel like a much more simple research process, whereas if you're dealing with the very end of his life, we're talking about active people who are
active lawsuits and criminal investigations.
Isn't that tricky?
God, you have no idea.
Yeah.
There are people at this con who are involved in all of that who I've either met up with or I'm trying to meet up with, and every time I talk to people involved, I get them telling me everything you know is wrong. And then the next person I tell you says, don't believe that last guy you talked to. He's just trying. I mean, it's a hall of mirrors.
Yeah.
And I'm most likely, spoiler alert, not going to in the book say, okay, I've conclusively figured out the objectively true narrative of what happened in the last year and a half of Stan's life. But I'm going to do my best to present all the information I've gathered with as skeptical an eye as possible, because, so many people involved in that saga have a vested interest in not telling the truth.
Of course.
And it's an enormous challenge. I hope I'm up to it. I'm very well into the book. I've gotten up to, let's see, what was I writing today? I'm at 1965 right now. More than a third of the way in. And, luckily I have some time left before I have to be writing that last few chapters. But yeah, it's a really difficult thing to do, and I'm really relishing the challenge, but let me just put it this way. I'm hiring a fact checker, and there will be a lawyer going through this book point by point to make sure we're not saying anything we can't back up, because there's some very litigious people involved in this story.
I can only imagine. You're a comic books fan? Are you enjoying...
Weirdly, I have been so behind on comics because I've been reading all these old comics, but I will tell you, I am very up on Hoxpox.
I was just going to ask.
Because I am over the moon with how much I'm enjoying these books.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Yep.
I had been a Hickman fan for a while. I have a Hickman quote on my goddamn arm. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm wearing a tweed jacket and a button-up, so I don't want to take it all off. But it's from Fantastic Four Dark Reign.
Yeah.
It is when Reed scrawls onto his wall, idea number 101, solve everything.
Yeah.
So that I have a direct lift of the lettering from that.
That is so funny.
Idea number 1, solve. It looks sort of like a note to myself.
I used to have that tacked onto my bulletin board in my office for years.
Great. Okay, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
No, I sometimes regret it because I'll be like, oh, God, solve everything. I can't do that. Why did I make that my motto?
But isn't it also about kind of the futility of that as well?
Yes. Exactly. See, you're a smart guy. You get it. It's definitely a matter of aspiration rather than direct achievement. But I love Hickman. I mean, there's some Hickman things I like better than other things, but I think his work at Marvel is in the pantheon. I think he is as good a writer as Marvel has ever had. Mm-hmm. And I'm so into Hoxpox right now, especially also because, I won't go down this road, but I'm Jewish and I spend a lot of time thinking and writing about Jewish issues and topics that are related to Jews and Judaism. And what's fascinating is I got an advanced PDF of the first issue from Marvel. And I was in Los Angeles doing San Diego Comic-Con, or it was post-San Diego. I was doing some research for the book. I get this PDF, and I read through it, and I went, oh my God, is Hickman doing an Israel thing here? Yep. I literally...
It sure seems like it.
It sure seems like it. I was like, did I smoke too much pot while I was here? Am I just thinking this comic was written for me personally? But I, especially in the last couple of issues, House of X 5 and is it House of X 6 and Powers of 10 5? Because they keep changing up the order of when they come out week by week.
House of X is over now.
Right, so House of X 6 and Powers of 10
still coming out Wednesday.
Well, anyway, those last two issues, when they get into the founding of a nation state and talking about how we need to make more mutants and birth rate stuff, it's just he's wading into some very dangerous territory, and I will always respect someone in comics who's willing to roll the dice and risk being too ambitious. This is one of the reasons why I'm one of the last people out there who, I don't want to say defends, but still finds fascinating, early aughts Mark Millar comics, when he was really going for broke and just being like, how can I offend everyone who's ever lived?
That's a good summation of his career.
At least that period. Now he's a little more palatable. But when it comes to Hickman, it's so... My only complaint about Hickman is sometimes it's so much information to take in that I start to get mad at myself, not at him, but at myself that I'm not taking enough time to in this case, literally decode the comics.
Yes.
I mean, you have the alphabetical, the cipher, not to be confused with Cypher the Mutant. And I don't carry the Cypher around like with me on a day-to-day basis. So if I'm like reading this on the subway, I'm like, I guess I'll read the Hoxpox Talks, discussion of this later, I'll decode it or whatever. So I'm behind on decoding some of it, but like, I think he's just. Well, and we're not even talking about the art. The art is stunning.
Yeah, I was just talking to Adriano Di Benedetto, and I think that he was very humble about it. But even like Pepe Larraz's art and his work with RB Silva, I mean, it's just like they've dialed it up to like 11.
No, it's incredible.
Crazy.
It's like, and the styles, the penciling styles are just similar enough that you're not getting whiplash when you go back and forth between the two series. But it's still, they each have their flares and their strengths, and I just there hasn't been a false move yet. Now it hasn't been that many issues, so who knows? But like, look, the guy had his initial run of FF into Avengers / New Avengers into Secret Wars, and like, there were some issues there that weren't great.
But he still landed it.
But he still freaking landed it. When very rarely in comics do you see somebody landing the end of a mega arc.
Yeah.
Usually there's either editorial interference, or they run out of steam, or they get bored, or whatever. But like that last page of Secret Wars number 8 or whatever it was that they dialed the series count up to, with Doom laughing, everybody lives. I was like, how did you do that?
Yep.
That was like. What is it, 2009 that he did Dark Reign all the way up to like 2016, and it was like one story. It's like, that's some Grant Morrison shit, man.
Well, and that's why when you hear them joke at SDCC about like, well, I've got, he...
Yeah, what did he say? It was like 30
he said,
years?
I've got, what did he say? I think
it was like 3 decades.
Multiple decades.
Yeah, multiple decades.
Of stuff.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all. There's multiple decades worth of like material to build on just in these, whatever it is, 11 issues that he's put out already. You have stuff where, like that issue with the Sinister Secrets, where you're just like, oh my god, each one of these, one sentence capsules is more story than X-Men writers have been allowed to put in their comics for years.
Well, and you're bringing up a good point, because I do think that like it's pretty cool to see Marvel allow someone to kind of go off the chain a little bit. You know what I mean?
I don't know what the internal politics were necessarily for all that. I mean, there's rumors that you hear, but like, I don't know what the difference is. But something has changed where they are allowing the X-Men to be as complicated as they have been in the past, and not just be a nostalgia exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is moving the ball way forward. I mean, literally, like, what is the X to the power of 3 is what, 1,000 years in the future?
1,000 years with the librarian.
1,000 years in the future with the librarian, right. I mean, God, in that one issue, like, you think, oh God, he's talking about the Kardashev scale, and it's like, type whatever civilizations. And then he like one-ups that, and he has like, galactic civilizations. And then in the second most recent issue, when he's just like, oh yeah, and by the way, here are some like universal civilizations. Like, this is one that's the size of like 8 black holes or whatever the hell. I'm like, Jesus.
He also
Christ.
introduced the Kurbon.
The Kurbon! I know! I would have missed that, I think, because I read comics too fast. But I can't remember. Was it you? I think you were the one.
I just brought it up because I didn't see anybody else talking about it.
Yeah, you tweeted about it, and I was like, "That is
it's wild."
I know. Yeah. I could talk about Hoxpox all day, but it's
well. I am glad that you're enjoying it. What are you like the most excited about coming up? In terms of comics.
I'm very curious to see how Dawn of X works, because what Hickman is doing right now in House of X and Powers of 10 is so specifically him. And I don't know how you translate necessarily the premises that... I'm not saying it can't be done by any means. I just literally don't know what it's going to look like. How you translate this set of weird premises that he's bringing up into different writers' styles. Artists, I'm not as concerned about, because it's comics. I mean, this isn't Sienkiewicz drawing Warlock. You're not like worried like, how could somebody draw this like that? He's still drawing standard X character. They're drawing standard X characters. But like, when it comes to the writing, you have some really talented writers working on this stuff. But at the same time, they're not the idiosyncratic thing that Hickman is. It's not me comparing them in terms of who's more talented. It's just Hickman has this weird brain, and I'm curious to see how other people play around in the sandbox that this weird, what is it? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like building up the structure out of the mashed potatoes. Like, I'm just curious to see other people trying to interpret whatever he's doing.
Yeah, me too.
And one thing I will shout out is I have been so fascinated to see one writer who I'm really enjoying reading, and I'll confess that we've become mildly friendly, so take this as the biased thing that it may or may not be, is Leah Williams. I'm really loving reading. Leah's sort of taking this...
Her Gwenpool is...
The Gwenpool stuff it's great.
Next level.
It's so funny.
It's
and
so good.
As such heart... I think there are a lot of smart people out there, and Leah is one person to watch.
Wave 2.
Wave 2.
She's on Wave 2.
Yep.
All right, one last very left field question.
Yes, uh-oh.
You did, within the last couple of years, sit down with a former classmate, am I correct, Rivers Cuomo?
I did.
Now, Zach and I are, I'm a Weezer purist.
Oh, really?
I'm not a huge fan past Matt Sharp's departure, but
sure.
A friend of the show, Chris Hassan, actually did an article for Adventures in Poor Taste about is Rivers Cuomo an actual X-Men fan?
Right, because you have In the Garage, obviously,
right.
where he mentions it. But...
And Weezer has been, referenced in the X-Men.
Correct.
Any insight on this?
I wish I could tell you. I actually recently spent some time with Rivers, because why not? He had said at the end of our last interview, he was like, if you're ever in LA, shoot me an email. So I did. I figured, this is the great thing about being a journalist is every once in a while an interesting person will just say come visit me, and you'll be like, sure, great, why not? So we had dinner a few months ago, and I wish I had thought to bring up so were you actually reading those comics, or were you referencing something else? Because he similarly, I used to wonder that about pro wrestling, because in Pinkerton he has the thing watching grunge leg drop New Jack through a press table, but it's referenced specifically in that song as what he's reading in someone else's diary.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're getting really wonky here.
No, that's
but
okay.
I wish these days one does not get the sense that Rivers spends a ton of time engaging with popular culture, because he's really into meditation and being a father.
Yeah.
But the next time I see him, I will ask him, and I will get back to you about that.
Yeah, it's so weird. He's really gone on the record saying that a lot of his lyrics, especially in the latter years, have just been kind of a word salad.
Yes.
So I'm curious how far back that extends.
You should interview him. There's stuff I can't tell you because he told it to me in confidence, but if you ever get to interview him, he's kind of an open book.
That would be fascinating.
The way he writes songs and constructs set lists is so fascinating.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the stuff, but it involves spreadsheets and outsourcing to Fiverr, and it's such a strange and, in my opinion, next level way to write stuff. Even if you don't like the finished product, I feel you have to admire the fact that he's trying to write songs in a fundamentally different way than they've ever been written before.
Yeah, it's very unique. Well, Abe, thank you so much for taking the time. Looking forward to the Stan Lee book.
Anytime. Fall 2020. Look out for it.
I hope you have a great rest of your con.
You too.
All right, I am here with Marvel senior editor and decipherer of all things Hickman, Jordan D. White. Jordan, it is a pleasure to finally meet you in person. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm having a nice time.
Good, and we're getting ready to go to the Dawn of X panel in just about an hour.
Yep.
Let's start by talking about conventions. We're here at NYCC.
Okay.
You did SDCC the last round. These are massive crowds, massive expectations for panel reveals. At this point in your career, what do you enjoy about coming to these things, and what is just a complete bummer for you?
I love doing panels, and I love seeing our collaborators that we don't see ever.
Yeah, that's true.
San Diego, I got to hang out with Jonathan a bunch, which I talked to him on the phone plenty, but I'm not actually face-to-face with him. And so, same for this show. When people come here that I see so rarely, it's awesome. The part I hate is those two shows in particular are too crowded for my tastes. I don't like walking through masses of people. That said, C2E2, that's a delightful show. It's not as crowded.
Mm-hmm.
Also a little bit more comic-centric, which I love. But again, the thing that's great about conventions is that I love comics, and we're at a place where everybody is there because they love comics, or other facets of whatever you want to call it, geek culture. You know, when I can, I do like going through and like going to the shops, buying stuff, buying toys for my kid or whatever, and stuff for myself as well.
Did you find anything cool? I found a couple of really fun things.
I didn't get anything here.
Okay.
See, honestly, actually, New York is a little bit harder for me because it's local for me.
Yeah.
That's actually less convenient.
Yeah.
Because I can't like bop off to a hotel room. My house is over an hour away from here. Whereas I go to San Diego, I can be like, I'll buy a bunch of stuff, walk back to the hotel, drop it all off, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But
here you're stuck with it.
Here I have to haul everything around. Exactly. Like I bought that Grant Morrison X-Men omnibus at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not going to buy anything like that here. That would break my back.
I started flipping through some of the Essentials phone books, and I was like, nope, why? I'm not doing this to myself, because it's just going to go in the backpack. So, this episode is going to come out, not this coming Monday, but the Monday after. So, by the time we're there, Hoxpox will already have ended.
Okay.
Since we're approaching the end of Hoxpox, what has been your reaction to the critical and fan reaction to the series as a whole?
I mean, generally speaking, people really love it.
Yeah.
Which is amazing and great. I mean, I have loved the story for a long time. I've been working on it for so long and been so wrapped up in it. Watching it actually come out has been just a joy because, again, everybody has been as excited as I was. I mean, Jonathan is listen. He's never going to listen to this, I assume. So I can feel free to say really nice things about him that I wouldn't want to say to his face. He's so talented. He might be the best writer at executing the idea exactly as he conceived it.
Okay.
You know, like he'll tell us, "Here's what I'm going to do," and we're like, "Okay, yeah." And then when he actually does it, it's like that. He nailed it. He did it exactly. And that's what it's been this whole phase of this whole stretch of the way. You know, again, he first told us about his ideas for House of X and Powers of 10. I mean, over a year ago. Maybe a year and a half ago. I think that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And things that seemed so crazy to us at the time have now been executed perfectly and like are just so awesome.
Well, I have to ask, I think when we had you on our show the last time, we were kind of talking a little bit about the pitch. And you mentioned
the thing that I didn't like.
The thing that either you didn't like or like that the whole room just went like, wow, gaga over it. And like, I'm just trying to imagine what people's reactions were to things like The Five or, you know, if there are things that like...
I mean, the big things that made people go like, oh my God, were... I mean, the biggest ones were Moira.
Yep.
I mean, there are all the things that everybody went, oh my God. The fact that mutants don't die anymore. That was a pretty big one.
Yeah.
You know, those are probably the two biggest ones. And they did. People were like, what? And he explained why and what he's going to do with that and how it works. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like that really does change everything. And that really does... I mean, the bulk of that is out. I mean, as we speak, there's one issue left to come out, even though obviously this will be out after that. So everybody will see how all of that plays out. But it's not so much a spoiler as much as a reverse spoiler to tell you in person right now that, you know, those things aren't going away.
Mm-hmm.
Powers of 10 number 6 is not a magic wand that goes, okay, it's back to normal. It's still Krakoa. Mutants still don't die. Like, this is for keeps. This is real. And yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Now, this book both books, or one book, however you want to look at it,
either way.
has been a very popular book. Tons of second and third printings.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more variant covers than I have seen in a comic shop in forever.
Well, I worked on Star Wars number 1.
Oh,
so
okay.
There were like 80 variant covers on that.
That's true. That one did have a lot. Has there been a relief as part of the X office to see that it is not only a creative triumph, but also that it is like selling well?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the best things that I've heard is people talking about, you know, shops telling us about how many new pull lists they've had to make
Yeah.
for people just wanting these books and who haven't been into the store in years. And that's amazing because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to do X-Men that anyone who's ever been an X-Men fan or ever thought about being an X-Men fan could jump into with both feet and go, this feels like the X-Men, but also totally different, and where is this going to go?
There's definitely buzz out there, too.
Yeah.
I mean, every week that I'm going in and getting my pull list, I'm hearing people come in and say, what's this X-Men thing that's going on? Can I get number one? And it's like, well, no, that one might cost you a little bit.
I think the fourth print is out now.
Yeah, but we have all the printing, so we can get you set up. Now, you were just mentioning a lot of these sort of radical new ideas that he's introduced into this X universe. I think these are like genius level retcons, and there's risks in a lot of what it is that he's doing.
Oh yeah.
When I have had the opportunity to talk to Vita without getting into specifics about what's happening in Wave 2, there does seem to be a trust with the writers that they are also going to be allowed to take some risks.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, one of the biggest, I don't want to say difficulties, but one of the challenges is that he is doing so much to change what an X-Men story is in the present.
Yeah.
That we definitely had to do a lot of, I don't know what the right word is. Educating is not quite the right word, but like showing everybody what is going on because it's so fundamentally different. If you're going to come in and do the same X-Men story you would have done a year ago, it's just not going to fit. It has to be different. It has to be new. And if you're going to do that, you do have to give a lot of leeway. I mean, to talk about the books that we already do know about a bit, we've got Marauders is as different of an X-Men book as you can get. X-Men Pirates is bananas, but it really, I mean, again, now that all of House of X is out, I think it's a lot more clear what that book is.
Yes.
With the Hellfire Club being responsible for distributing of these medicines to humankind, but also that there are all these nations that didn't take the deal, and can we get the medicines to people who need them? Can we get mutants out of those nations who need to get out of those nations? And that's a great place for Kate.
I think a lot of people are waiting for the Wakandan war with Krakoa.
We'll have to see what happens with that.
We'll see. So Wave 1 is already casting this very wide net. We're going into space. We're going into the Navy. But Wave 2, we're not really sure. How wide are we going here in terms of creatively or even geographically with what we're doing?
Well, I mean, creatively, I mean, we're trying to cover this whole new world. Like, there's so many. Now that everybody's read the 12 issues or the 11, depending, you can see there's so many possibilities.
Oh yeah.
Jonathan has done a lot of seeding of things and setting up of stories. There's so many places to go, and he can only cover so many of them himself. There's going to be a lot of room for other books to explore those things. And if you look at the X-Men line traditionally, both not just when it was most successful, but even more recently, again a year ago, it's a pretty robust line.
Yeah.
We're coming off a few months where we only had 4 X-Men books in a month. Well, 5 if you count Dead Man Logan.
And am I mistaken? There's a week of releases where there's 6 books in one Wednesday?
Yes.
I mean, that's ambitious.
There is. Well, that's because that's a quirk of scheduling because of the holidays this year. 2 holidays falling on a Wednesday, so we really only had 3 weeks we could put books out.
Yeah.
But that month, again, so there's a lot of books that month, but that's 12 books in December. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of books, but historically for X-Men, it's not that many books.
No, it's not. It could be a lot more, right?
Right. And so we're and as people have noted, we're double shipping books that month. I'll just come right out and tell you, we're going to double ship them in January.
Okay.
But that's because we want to get as much story out as possible. We want to cement this new status quo. And the writers who are working on Wave 1 are the ones who have known about what that status quo is and how to write an X-Men book in this new world and how things work in that for the longest. And so we want to model it so that, a few months from now, when a writer comes up to me and says, hey, I've got an idea for an X-Men book, again, it's not going to be the one they had 6 months ago.
Right.
It's going to be, here's how that idea would work in this new world, and why, and how.
So, we've already got 6 books.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Leah's doing a book.
Uh-huh.
We know that Vita's doing a book.
Uh-huh.
I am hearing that there's a Wolverine book perhaps being announced today. You don't have to comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard the rumor of there perhaps being a cartoonist, whatever that means, on something. How many more additional... And again, this is just like, no one knows.
Sure.
No one knows.
I mean, we've got a lot of books cooking. Don't expect to have a month with 30 X-Men books. Like, we're not going to go crazy. Unless they sell that well.
Yeah,
I suppose.
sure.
But
they very well could. Who knows?
There's currently no plans for anything that nuts. That said, we've got a lot of ideas and we've got a lot of things. We'll see which ones come to fruition when, they're not all going to come out at once, for sure. We'll stagger them and we'll, here's the other thing. We're not going to necessarily be afraid of saying, this is a story that has an ending when it does. There's been a lot of talk over recent years of what's the difference between an ongoing and a miniseries, and in the end, what matters is telling a good story. And some people feel like if you launch something as a miniseries, it won't sell. It'll automatically sell less than an ongoing. There's some evidence to back that up. There's other things that go against it. It's hard to say. We're going to tell stories as long as they need to be told, and hopefully not overstay our welcome on any of
Well,
them.
I think that's a smart approach, you know? You're not committing to anything past, what the creativity behind it can actually supply.
Right. We'll always deliver a good number of X-Men books and a solid flow of great stories. So I'm not worried about us running out of ideas anytime soon.
I wouldn't think so. Now, you've got Hickman kind of setting up almost an isolationist tack here with the nation states of Krakoa. I believe we've got an Atlantic and we've got a Pacific.
It's just one state, but yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got the
multiple
portals, so they can walk
islands,
from one
right?
island. They can walk.
They can go to the moon.
They can go to the moon. They can go to space. They
Right.
can go to...
Now, despite this sort of like nation state where everybody is just there, I think fans were pretty surprised to see some X characters on ads for the upcoming incoming crossover.
Mm-hmm.
How are the X-Men going to be able to fit in with the larger Marvel U if sort of the status quo of what it is that they're doing is establishing like, hey, this is our digs and we're chilling over here?
Well, I mean, the answer is kind of twofold in that, first of all, it's not like characters who aren't in New York can't interact with the Marvel heroes in general. I mean, characters from other countries can cross over with any character they want to. And it's even easier for mutants because, again, they can walk out of a portal in Madison Square Park. They can walk out of a portal in Central Park.
That's right.
That's without considering all their teleporters as well, which they have plenty of. So they're not going to be missing from the Earth. Besides, like, the Earth is like their planet, so they should be able to, go anywhere they want to on it, right? So
yeah, all right. This is a little bit of a shift, but this year we've seen the return of some writers and some artists to the line, some legacy people.
Mm-hmm.
People like Claremont, Sienkiewicz, Sam Keith, Louise Simonson did a Power Pack story.
Yeah.
Are we going to continue to see legacy creators being honored moving forward, or do you think that was just right time, right place?
Well, I like to think that we do that on a regular basis, generally speaking, but I think all the projects you specifically mentioned were part of our 80th anniversary celebration specifically. All so, right. That was the main. That was a specific effort to go, hey, to celebrate the 80th, let's revisit as many things as we can. But that being said, for example, Chris Claremont was also involved in the wedding special, and he's been involved in various projects over the years. I'm sure, generally speaking, we will continue to bring back folks who are our classic creators. They're the reason we love comics in the first place.
I know that some X fans have been patiently waiting for the Hoxpox trade to read it all in one. We're in sort of an interesting publishing world with comics. Raina Telgemeier has the #1 book in America as of last week. I'm not sure if that's still holding on. Where do you fall on the floppies versus waiting for the trade argument?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated question. Obviously, all sales count.
Mm-hmm.
But, generally speaking, comic books that are published as single issues sell in trade relative to the way they sell in floppies. Which is not to say it dictates it, but I think when people are ordering their collected editions, they look at how the floppies sell in order to place their order, to decide how many they want. Mm-hmm. And so that affects it. And obviously books that more people buy and read and have more word of mouth are going to sell more as well. So generally speaking, I think it is important to keep the sales of those single issues up, because that's the way the industry that does that. I mean, again, because the book you're talking about isn't from that model.
Right. Different model, right?
But the books that we do, that's the way that they survive. When we do original graphic novels, they don't make as much money.
Okay.
They're fun to do, and they're neat, and I'm sure we will continue to do them sometimes for various reasons. But generally speaking, our comics do better by a lot.
Yeah.
To me personally, my personal thinking on it is that I like reading single issue comics as they come out as much as possible, but I do love getting collected editions for a permanent thing. The books I love the most, I get in all forms.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, one of my favorite comic series in the world is Savage Dragon, and I literally buy the single issues, the trades, and the black and white editions.
So you have it three times.
I have every issue 3 times, yeah.
Well, everybody's got that, any X-Men story that you continuously buy in different formats, I feel like...
those ones are all at least a little different. It's not, if they just put out a new version of the trade, I'm not going to buy it again.
That's right.
That Grant Morrison one, I already have all the issues of that.
Yep.
But I was like, that's a really beautiful omnibus.
It is a really nice omnibus.
It wasn't the first edition. It was the newer one. I think 3rd edition.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got a really awesome cover. Under the dust fold, it has the first spread from the first issue, where it's like... it's hard to describe. It's a beautiful giant X, and you see all their faces. And it's a super good-looking book, and I was like, that's a really nice permanent way to look at that book. So I'm happy about that.
Well, that was one thing I wanted to ask you about. The last time we spoke on the show, you were kind of redigesting Grant Morrison's new X-Men yet again. You're a huge fan of it.
Yeah,
do you feel like you are in the midst of another renaissance like that?
I mean, I do, which is a little nerve-wracking, but terrific and fun. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm part of something special, and I obviously I'm not going to take the credit for that. It's Jonathan's genius that is getting us to where we are. I'm just happy to be helping, and helping keep the trains running, and organizing the schedules and stuff for the artists and stuff, and make sure this book happens. Honestly, I am really proud of the fact that we got all 12 issues out on time. That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Sometimes it was a nail-biter.
I mean, especially given, you've got... I was talking to Adriano Di Benedetto. RB and Adriano, I feel like, stepped it up big time with their work. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Pepe is killing it. Best in the biz, I think.
I mean, we were very sad that Marte had to step off.
Yeah.
But David Curiel really, knocked it out of the park.
Great job,
did a absolutely great job.
Yeah.
Marte still has a couple pages in each of the last 2 issues, but the bulk of each of issue 6 is David. Every single person involved in the books just nailed it. Just absolutely nailed it. And Jonathan's, text pages are so interesting and so cool, and I think changed the way that the pace of reading the comic and the way you read the comic, which again was what he was intending it to do, and he nailed it. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Those were fun. Those were fun to do, and I'm very excited about them. Like I know some people. Some fans were like, "Well, I'm just not going to read that," and that's fine.
Okay.
Like, you're welcome to do whatever you want.
You're missing out.
I think you're missing out. There's some real good story stuff in there.
God. Like, just the Sinister Secrets alone.
Well, sure.
That was like a massive thing right on its own, you know?
By the way, I had no idea that was coming.
Oh, really?
When he turned that in, I was like, what?
It must have been so delightful.
Absolutely.
To get, right?
Absolutely. And we got to pour over them and figure out what was what and what he was talking about. It was a blast. No, I was very surprised by that, but in the best way.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for sitting down, literally, to talk. And I hope you guys have a good Dawn of X panel. And
I hope so, too.
Congratulations on Hoxbox, man.
Thank you so
made
much.
It through. We're
I'm
on
really
to the
excited.
Dawn.
Yeah. I hope you like them.
Wow. That was a lot of really great interviews, if I do say so myself. And I do, since I'm the only one here right now. Big shout out to anyone working at the con. It is truly amazing to see creators in Artists Alley doing live commission work while hawking their wares, signing books, and trying to avoid getting con crud. I distinctly remember seeing Mark Silvestri eat an entire sandwich in front of me this weekend, and I think there's a really good lesson there, which is you got to take good care of yourselves, guys, because it's hard to survive these things. Our thanks to Reed Pop and New York City Comic Con for the press pass. Hope we can do that again sometime soon. Next week on Battle of the Atom, we are packing our bags and heading to our friendly neighbors in the north, Canada, to spend some time with North Star. Until then, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!
And I am here with one last very special guest. That's right, I am here with my daughter. So, how was your New York Comic Con experience?
Fun. I liked it a lot.
What was the very best thing that happened while we were there?
Going to Tokidoki and getting something from Agnes Garbowska. It was fun.
What did you get from Agnes Garbowska?
A drawing of the Teen Titans Go Starfire.
Very, very cool. And do you want to go back to New York Comic Con next year?
Yes.
Well, you heard it here, folks. This is Eyewitness account of wanting to go back to New York Comic Con next year. We'll see you then.